I'll give you another lifetime example. My dad was a truck driver. So I would see him like maybe once a month just because he was on the road a lot. So I thought that, you know, when I have kids, I want to come home every day. So, you know what? I'm going to get a job, I'm going to work from home. But you know what? I'm going to be at home every day. And why are we speaking on fatherhood? Man, trying to talk about how much I love these kids, man. I'm telling you, Nate, you good without them. You good without them. You are good without them. But what bothered me is that I used to see my father once a month. And so my experience was I need to be somebody that comes home every day. But me coming home every day and sitting at a computer talking to everybody else but my kids is not being a good father. But I thought that that's what it meant because I wanted my father to be there. So based off my experiences, this is how I behave. This is what I thought about him not being there. This is what it made me feel. So I'm going to behave, you know what, I'm going to make sure I'm there every day. But I wasn't intentional on how I'm being there with him. They're at this event now, but if even when we was at home, they'd be in another room, I'm in another room working. I have to be intentional understanding my present moment. How do I get to this place of being able to evaluate who I am within this situation? That's what therapy's for. It's not just for what's wrong with you. Yeah, we can deal with substance abuse, but I've been a substance abuse counselor for 10 years, dealing with people addicted to heroin, crack. I promise you, there's no one that I ever met that didn't know heroin was bad. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times we think like, oh, you're a substance abuse counselor. Like, man, do you know what crack does to you? Do you know what heroin does to you? Yeah, they know. They ain't seen people OD. Nothing's new. But what we don't ask them is that we know how dangerous this drug is, but what could be powerful enough for me to know how risky it is for me to use it and take it anyway? That's what we don't ask. They know that they out there looking crazy on the corner. One time I saw a dude doing above the rim. He was playing basketball by himself at the free throw line. He was pretending to be the crowd booing him and the person shooting the free throw at the same time. So he's sitting there and he like, and then all of a sudden he'd be like, boo! And I'm like, bro, on the corner of Roosevelt, just by himself having a ball. But what can be so bad that you don't care about anything else? Because being a substance abuse counselor, it gave me empathy because I would hear what the stories are. The stories would be, my wife and kid died in a car accident. The stories would be, hey, I got HIV. You know what I'm saying? We don't think about, and it doesn't even have to be that bad. Just because you're homeless, you can get through. Remember I told you the experience? Just because you're homeless, it's not the event, it's how you experience it. I think a lot of times we also get confused in our community that one of the statistics I want to show that only 1% of black men are therapists. We have all these social work programs. We want to get them a job, get them off the street, make sure they get housing. All those things are important because when it comes to Maslow, that's on one of the slides, but you know. That doesn't mean that. You know, a lot of times we objectify what our issues are. We say that the issue is because we don't have this object and that object. But we don't have no understanding of what our value is. And what therapy does is help you get to that place. It's about asking you questions, not telling you what to do. It's about understanding where it comes from. I believe in the 7 dimensions. There's 7 dimensions of wellness. There's physical, emotional, social, occupational, spiritual, mental, and environmental. Each one of those dimensions impact your overall health. And it goes back to Maslow. Hey, if you're homeless and hungry, no, you may not be in the mood for some therapy. Because at this point in time, your housing status may be in flux. If you got kids and you lose your job, you know what? Your occupational dimension can override everything that's going else in your life. You can have a wife, a good home, let you lose your job, and all of a sudden you're depressed. These dimensions work together. It's not to say what mental health is the end-all be-all. It's understanding how they're all integrated within one another. What I do is, when we talk about like what therapy is and how it can help you, the ways that I self-evaluate that is every month I do what my 7 dimensions are. Every month I ask myself, hey, where am I socially? Where am I emotionally? So once again, I'm gonna give you real life examples versus just telling you some words. I recently moved from 48th and Ashland to Plainfield, right? I recently started a business. I recently just made the most money I ever made in my life, but I was still depressed. I was still sad, and I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't figure out why, right? I'm like, man, I'm making money. I'm making good money. Got a house. Why am I depressed? Instead of just being depressed, I did my 7 dimensions. I'm like, physically, you know, you stop riding your bike, you know, because I just moved. So I'm like, you know what, I don't really know people out here. I don't really know where to go. Before, if I was going to the gym, you know, the guys would just link up and say, hey, meet me at the gym. So I would just go. So I'm not doing that because I'm not a gym rat. I'm a hooper. Let's go hoop. Let's go ride bikes. Let's go do something. But now I'm in the suburbs, an hour away. I don't have no bike. You know, I used to live on 48th and Ashland. Even though the environment was bad, all my guys used to pop up on me. Ain't nobody driving no hour to come see me. So now my social dimension I'm missing. And my mental dimension, I think that was part of the problem because I thought because I'm a therapist, I know all the right things to do and say. But I was forgetting God. My spiritual was lacking. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just what you know. There's things that's going to be outside of your understanding. And I had to self-assess myself to see what was missing. It was like, I say that God is the reason that I'm here. He brought me to the dance. Now I want to go do my own thing. Now you got to leave with who you came with. I got here by His grace. Then all of a sudden I get here, then I think I know what I'm doing. So then I stop relying on Him because, oh, I got it. I don't need you no more. I'm straight. And so then He put me in different situations where I'm feeling drained, where I'm not having the family support that I need. Life is constantly always going to have uncertainty. And we need to constantly be checking in on ourselves. It's not just about how much money we make. It's not just about whether you're in a relationship, have kids. Like, all these things are titles. Sometimes we need to be able to be alone with ourselves to understand ourselves and who we are. Are any of the slides ready? A lot of times we were talking about, you know, what a therapist is versus the different positions. This is very important. Like, because a lot of times in social work, you know, you have different positions for different things. You have a counselor, you have a case manager. Each one of those things do specific things. Case managers help you with external factors. Case managers help you with housing. They help you access other resources. Counselors, substance abuse counselor. Their job is to assess you and assist you with whatever the deficiency is. Mentor, life coach. That's someone that's giving you advice based off their own experience. That's not a therapist. A therapist not only has to get a master's level degree in it, then they have to do 2 years of trained counseling with someone overseeing them to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Discussing these issues. This year, make 10,000 hours that I've been discussing issues such as death of people's sons. I've had people who they son OD'd, they thought he was just drunk and just left him in the living room walking past his dead body for hours. It's that experience over and over again of helping people process trauma. You should go to an expert for some of these things. A lot of times we either go to the bottle, we go to alcohol, or we go to our friends. But a lot of times what we're trying to do is just get enough done so that we're able to manage, that we're able to keep going and not have our lives impacted, versus really understanding how it impacted us and really identifying what that experience was like. Can you play this? It's not. In this video, it was Michael Beasley, and he was talking about all the issues that he was having. He was talking about how his mom died in front of him, and they kept saying like, oh, that, you know, you're a real nigga, you've been through a lot. What does that mean? That was his question to know. He was like, you say I'm real. He said, what does that even mean? I'm real just because I've been through a lot of stuff. And a lot of times we attach that label to people that have been through a lot of traumatic events, especially in our community. That, especially black men, with the gun violence we see, the drugs, the poverty, and then we don't think that that's traumatic to us.
You say the only people
he was talking about all the things that he's been through. And he was like, man, Joe, you could just come to me. You can just come talk to me. He was like, for what? He was like, man, I'm tired of depending on people and them letting me down. I'm tired of trying. He was like, man, I ain't been through so much. And he was like, man, you just calling me. We cannot put us surviving on other people to make us feel good about ourselves. That there has to be something about you. A lot of times when people have kids, they change up the things that they do in their life. Like, you know what, I had a kid, I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking. But why didn't you do that for you? Why is it your life valuable? It's only valuable in reference to you being responsible to somebody else. It should be valuable in response to who you are. I drive crazy. I slowed down about 20 miles per hour when I had kids, right? Now all of a sudden I got everybody putting on seatbelts. Why didn't I have a seatbelt on? A lot of times as men, we relate our value to in connection to how it's a resource to other people. In that, we need to look within ourselves and how do we find value in who we are and what it is that we love about ourselves, how it is that we connect within ourselves. Coping is real, and you either doing it voluntarily or involuntarily. I don't care what it is. Either you're being intentional, either you have a bad day and you be intentional on how I'm going to decide to deal with it, or you be habitual and you do what you always do. Whether that's women, drugs, whatever it is. It's about being intentional on how it is that we cope. Can you at least pull up the PowerPoint slide? Therapy treats, like I said, it treats anxiety, it treats substance abuse. Yes, it treats those things. But like I said, I don't want it to be associated with it treats something that's wrong with you. It's good for helping you self-assess like what's going on within you. That's what therapy's good for. A lot of times, man, people like, man, I'm suicidal. Whenever it reaches a point where you're scared to leave that person by itself, you need to call 988. There's a certain level of care needed when it reaches a certain point. When somebody like, man, I want to kill myself, then they be like, oh man, you should go talk to somebody. Hey, that's different. They need to come talk to somebody before we got to that point. They still need to go talk to somebody, but at this point, safety is the primary concern. That's why if you got kids in school, as soon as they say I'm suicidal, they send them to the hospital, and then everybody be mad. But the number one thing is the safety. I can't help you if you ain't alive. So the first thing we have to do is put you in a place where we know that you can't harm yourself. So that's very important to know. A lot of times people are seeking therapy once it gets to this point. But once it gets to that point, it's already too late. So how do we figure out when we need help and get to that beforehand? That's what therapy's for. Coping. This is a story of Lil Bibby. He had cried about Juice WRLD dying. And he had said that Juice WRLD kept telling him like he was popping pills because he was trying to deal with his anxiety. And Bibby was like, yo, I got anxiety too. Like, why you tripping? We can be going through the same thing, and it doesn't impact the next person the same way it impacts me. I think that therapy is important for black men, but it doesn't mean that because I'm a black man, I automatically know you. We can grow up on the same block, be from the same hood, still be completely different. The point of having black men be therapists is that we don't have to break down certain issues regarding understanding I get pulled over once a month. That it's important to make sure that you have a therapist that understands you, but it's not to say that I know you. Me being a therapist doesn't make me an expert in people. It makes me an expert in knowing the right questions to ask. I will never be an expert in who you are. I'm trained to ask the right questions to get you to reevaluate yourself and get you to look within yourself. A lot of times, I think anger comes up a lot. A lot of times, anytime we talk about emotions, the first thing we talk about is anger. The point of this slide was that anger is a secondary emotion. You cannot feel anger unless you feel something else. Whenever you say you're angry, that's an amplification of a particular emotion and or it's a combination of multiple emotions. And the default is anger. Anger does not exist without another emotion. If you're saying that you're angry all the time you don't understand, that means that you don't understand the full emotional spectrum. And how can we regulate our emotions if we don't understand what all of them are? The first thing to changing anything is self-awareness. Is to be aware. Forget self-awareness. Let's take therapy out of it. Before you can change anything, you got to be aware of what's going on. You have to be able to identify what the issue is and what are the things that you can do to sort of change it. A lot of times when people say like, man, I was in my feelings, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. Your feelings exist in a different part of the brain than rational and logical thought. Critical thought exists in the prefrontal cortex. The reptilian part of the brain, that's responsible for survival. When you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, you don't think about which one you're gonna do. You just do it. That's responsible for survival. That's not something that you turn on. That's something that's just there. Its job is just to make sure that you survive. The amygdala, or the midbrain, that is where emotions rely. So a lot of times when we get in our feelings, that means that that part of the brain is overstimulated and that the rest of it is not doing it. You ever do something real stupid? One time I did something real stupid. It was a long time ago, so don't judge me. I was in my apartment. And I was arguing with my girl at the time. And I was in my pantry, and my pantry was like from this chair to like here, right? And she did something, she said something. She wasn't there, I was by myself, we was talking on the phone. And I went like Donkey Kong on the walls and put like 8, 10 holes in my wall. And it's like every time I go to my pantry, I'm like, you stupid. You stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was the point in that? But when my amygdala was activated, that's what I wanted to do. It didn't make sense later. It was a choice. Anger is not the violence of the behavior. That's still a choice. A lot of times people say they do something, oh, my anger lost control. No, you can be angry and be quiet. You can be angry and be quiet, but a lot of times the behavior, it feeds. You ever notice when you get upset, when you yell, when you scream, it feels like a fire building up within you that is feeding itself? Because it actually is. In us, there's always two spirits. And it's whichever one you feed. If you feed into your emotions and your anger, then that's what you're going to get, erratic behavior. But if you take a minute to step back, a lot of times we say, like, take a minute to breathe. Let me tell you what that means in layman terms. That means that your amygdala is highly activated. And so once you take a minute to breathe, let it calm down so that your prefrontal cortex can kick back in and you can think about this logically. They're not just telling you to breathe because it's something corny to do. They're saying that you're too activated and you need to do something to be able to deactivate yourself, whatever that is. That's the other hard part about therapy. What works for this person may not work for you. I can't just say, oh, I struggle with anxiety. Okay, just do this, you'll be okay. That's not what that means. Because then I have to, you can sit here and say, man, I struggle from anxiety, my emotions, stuff like that. How you regulate yourself is different from how I regulate myself. When I get upset, I get physically hot. I gotta go outside, I gotta put some cold on my head, I gotta do something to make me feel cooler. Because if I'm hot, I get irritated. Sometimes I cannot be mad. If I get hot, I start feeling irritated because it's so attached to what my emotions are. So in going to therapy, it's about understanding what really works for you and exploring. You were dealing with at 20 or 25. At 35, it's going to be different. It's constantly changing. It's not to say that therapy is not about intellect. It's not about intellect. It's about self-awareness. It's about being in the position to take in new situations and understanding where you're at now. That last picture I had was is that people change. A lot of times we let people think that we are the things that we went through, right? That had nothing to do with who I am. But who I chose to be is different. How do I know what that is? Do I base that off a category? Do I base that off of, oh, I make this amount of money, or I'm this type of person? One picture says a lot just by the category. This might say, oh, we think you're a good dad. Hey man, I still struggle. But I know who I am. I know who I'm trying to be better. And that's why self-awareness is good. Because you know what? On the surface, yeah, I have my kids and they're here. What does that mean? They can be here and I can still not be good. I can still not understand them. I can still not be empathetic and apologize because I think that I know better. You know what I'm saying? No, I still have to understand them on their level. Me knowing who I am is knowing how I exist in this world, and it's my experience. But my self-awareness and the purpose of therapy helps me to constantly be reevaluating that so I'm not getting stuck in this box of just reacting to life. The difference between knowing your purpose and reaching self-actualization and reacting to life is that you're intentional when you know your purpose. When you know your purpose, certain steps don't make sense. Hey, this is not in line with what it is I'm trying to do. But if you're not consciously thinking about the moves that you want to make and what those moves look like, then you just, what's that called? People don't do it no more. You're just driving around. It's different when you're trying to get to a destination. If you're trying to get to a destination, if I'm trying to drive from here to Ohio, I'm going to take a certain destination. If I get a detour, I'm going to go around a detour, but my purpose is I'm still trying to get to where I'm trying to get to. And so it guides how I drive and the route that I'm taking. I'm not going to go a route that's going to take me out the way. But when you don't have purpose, you don't have a destination. And we just willing to go whatever. Hey man, what you doing? Oh, nothing. All right, come through. When you have purpose, where are we going? If it's en route to where I'm going, then we good. If not, then it doesn't fit my lifestyle. All right? So I want to thank y'all for being patient with the technical difficulties. And once again, we went over some of the basic things, but I want you to know, like, we're going to go back. Bring in the introduction of what is therapy and what's the purpose of it. What is a therapist? Like I said, I was hoping to make sure that broccoli wasn't like orange chicken, but like I said, we all here, and it's still, we still gonna have the panel discussion coming up, as well as workshops in the afternoon. The workshops in the afternoon are gonna be basically, hey, you find the one that fits you. You know, my workshop is be on what are the tools that you're getting from therapy. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Once again, I want to say thank you for your time, thank you for your patience, and thank you for your ears and your heart. And with that, I'm returning back over to Maya, and then she's going to introduce the moderator for today.
Those were some really inspiring words, and before we bring up our moderator, I just want to let you guys know, first of all, chicks love when a guy's emotional, okay? So if nothing else, if you don't get anything else out of this, therapy is a hot topic with girls, okay? So if nothing else, girls take that, okay? Acknowledging your emotions, acknowledging how you feel really helps. But I also want to encourage you guys to walk in it's okay. Walk in the idea that it's okay to not be okay. So if you are going through these things, some of the things that Antonio mentioned, it is okay. Because that's your journey, that's a part of your journey. So it's okay if you're not okay right now. And so the purpose of this event, of these workshops, is to hopefully support you in what you're going through, find some type of method or coping to help you get through your journey and not to just go through the motions and not just survive. So with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Rodney Alexander. He's going to help us keep us rooted in this panel discussion right now.
Good morning.
Okay, you need that?
I always try not to use the mic. Good morning. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Be Well and Anchored in Wellness for putting this event on. My name's Rodney Alexander, and I'm a black man unapologetically. And unfortunately or fortunately, but thankful for today, we are addressing issues that are not commonly addressed. We deal with every ill and every symptom in the community except for our mental. So once again, thank you, Be Well. Thank you, Anchored in Wellness, for putting this on. We are going to get something today, folks, that we can take with us that's going to exponentially and incredibly change our lives. And we're going to spread these things and utilize these tools to be able to continuously move forward in a positive, transformed manner. The goal and purpose for the day is to give a space for black men to discuss their journey unapologetically. We say LGBTQ, we say Latinx, we say black and brown, we say everything except for black. Today we're saying black men. Apropos, this is the 1-year anniversary of Anchored in Wellness. Congratulations, Mr. Wheeler. Apropos, this is African American Black History Month. This is also a space for young men to talk about their journey navigating society as a black man, as professional barrier with professionals, and deal with the barriers and obstacles that you all face. With this conference, we hope to inspire other men who have struggled and who still are. And we don't want you to give up, but we want you to continue to try again. The objectives: to provide culturally competent workshops by licensed and culturally competent black professionals. Listen, Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, the first step in education is knowledge of self. The first step in education is a knowledge of self. We need to know who we are, how we deal, how we cope, and all of the things that Antonio spoke about, and then we start educating. But what we'll do is we'll educate without a knowledge of self and without a knowledge of coping. And then we'll label those things stereotypically behavioral context and things of that nature, especially with black men. We're going to deal with what the why is. And Antonio, thank you for starting that off. What is the why? There's a stigma in the black community for every system in this country, rightfully so, because every system in this country has taken advantage and abused and mistreated us. So we don't go to the hospital when we're feeling pain because we don't trust doctors. Men are taught, especially black men, to handle and cope with all of the things that Antonio said because we don't trust to talk to nobody, because 9 times out of 10 they don't even look like us. So how could they understand what we're dealing with? Economically, we don't like to put our money in banks. We put it in a box or someplace else because banks swindle. All of these historical ills through the systems that we're forced to live in that we have to cope and deal with every day. And some of them, if we don't utilize them, can be detrimental to our health. And those 7 steps that Antonio was talking about. So we're going to deal with what trauma is, okay? And I really want you all to engage and ask the questions of the panel. What is trauma? More specifically, what is trauma to a black man? Our white counterparts may have a different definition of what trauma is to them. There are cultural things that are relative to us because we deal in a cultural space that other cultures in this country don't deal in. So we're going to deal with what is trauma. We're going to stretch the panel to answer these questions, and we're going to make sure that you guys get the answers before you leave here. We're going to debunk the stigma of addressing black men's mental health and promote and advocate for black men and youth engaging in therapy. What we want you to leave here with today is an understanding of what therapy is and those things that Antonio talked about. Without further ado, the panelists are here. Okay, I'm going to introduce the panelists. And as they come up, we're going to engage in some questions. And you guys will be able to engage in some questions also. That's what happens when you mix up your sheets. Mr. Obari Cartman is the chapter president of the Association for Black Psychologists. Can you give Mr. Obari Chapman a round of applause, please? I'm sorry, Obari Cartman. Cartman. I said Chapman. Is Obari here? We just announced you, bro. Okay, thank you. We've met Mr. Antonio Wheeler, but Mr. Antonio Wheeler will sit on our panel, and he's an LCSW and a founder of Anchored in Wellness, which is a counseling service that he provides. And once again, this is his 1-year anniversary this month. And then we also have licensed clinical social worker, Mr. Durrell Sheppard. Now, as I call you guys can feel free to make your way towards the front so we can begin the panel discussions. I want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. I specifically want to give a shout out to Proviso Township High School's District 209 and the Panthers, Pythons, and Pirates that chose to grace us with your Saturday morning. It's hard to get young folks to give up their Saturday morning. So I want to thank the young folks and any other high school students that may be in the audience, young folks, younger adults, graduates, college students, all of the black men, all of the people, all of the sisters that came out this morning to participate in this first historical presentation. Okay, guys, without further ado, I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes each to do a more in-depth introduction of who you are to the crowd, to the audience, and then we're going to begin right with the questions. So we'll start over here.
Peace, family. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see everybody showing up. As my brother says, a lot of places y'all could be on Saturday morning, but to decide to be here to take care of ourselves as a community. Black men talk about a lot of versions of success, making money and fame, and being, my son right here want to be an influencer already, but it's so important to start with your own mental health, your wellness, your peace of mind, getting your mind right. So I'm glad y'all here for that and prioritizing that. My name is Obari Cartman. I'm a psychologist, the current president of the Chicago Association of Black Psychologists. All my work is focused on black men and boys. I got a book I wrote a couple years ago for black men. Every day I'm in conversation with black men about what we need to do, right? How to take better care of ourselves. I'm working a lot of high schools and prisons and juvenile detention centers. I'm in Audi home a couple of days. So, I mean, just wherever I go, I'm trying to figure out how we could strengthen our mental, our spiritual, our emotional health to make sure that we're freeing ourselves, to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, and make sure that part of our versions of success as black men means, peace of mind at the center of it. So I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to having this conversation. Appreciate Brother Wheeler for putting this together.
I'm Durrell Sheppard. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, also psychotherapist. I've been trained in trauma for a long time formally. But informally, I was trained down the street, honestly. I grew up right down the street in Inglewood, Sherman Elementary School. Saw some of the worst things that some of you all have probably seen as well. But the experiences really didn't matter. Actually, the experiences occurring didn't matter. It was my responses to the experience. So I love to talk about mental health and trauma, and especially black men's mental health. So yeah, I'm really happy to see you all in this space. This is a rarity, by the way. You don't see this many black faces, I'm sorry, in this space together, talking about mental health in an intentional way. So I'm happy to have this discussion today.
I'll keep it short. The question is what brought us to being a therapist?
Just a short introduction.
Yeah, mine was just I had a felony, so the only job I can get was mentoring in Inglewood. And so they was like, oh, you got a felony, you could teach the kids what not to do. And so my first job in social work was mentoring in Inglewood, and then it led to substance abuse counseling because, once again, they're background friendly. And so that's actually how I got into this field.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, this first question, I want you guys to really pay attention to this question and this answer, because some of you may be thinking about pursuing this very same thing. We always said that this is a space that many of us don't delve into. So this question to the panel is, what made you get into this type of therapy? And how has therapy benefited you? We listened to Antonio Wheeler say that he has to do certain things for himself. So in order to help others, we have to be able to help ourselves. So to the panel, and you can take it in any order you choose to, what made you get into this? What made you pursue a career in therapy, and how has it benefited you?
Well, I'm gonna start with, if anybody in the room is interested in becoming a therapist or entering the mental health field, there's a lot of opportunity right now. Like the movement has really grown in a way where we've reduced the stigma of black people going into therapy. People are looking for therapists right now, and right now we have a national shortage of workers. Right, so there's nothing but open fields. People asking me every day, they got job opportunities, they paying decent money. You can make real money doing this kind of work. So if there's something you're interested in, I really encourage you to think about it. The thing that makes you a good therapist, in my opinion, is someone that really just genuinely cares for people, that's a good listener, that likes to solve problems, that can help sort of sort out, difficult, complicated situations. And if you're already doing that in your life, like if you the one your friends go to, right? If you like to really so people be asking how people doing just in passing, and they just walk in and they don't really care about the answer. If you one of those kind of people that ask people how they're doing, and you really actually want to hear the answer, this is the field for you, right? You can get paid to do the thing that you actually love to do, and that's what got me into the work. Like I really I love it, right? And if you find something that you love to do, and then find somebody to pay you for it, like you really never for real work a day in your life. I'm traveling the country, talking to people about the stuff that's important to me, and they pay me for it. Like, you're crazy. I do this for free. So for me, that was it. Like, it was just ever since I was in high school, even before high school. I was in junior high school being like the peer mediators. I was one of those kids. And then in high school doing all those programs where we going doing the retreats and talking about the issues. Like, I was always into that kind of stuff. And I grew up in a house where my father was teaching us about culture. We celebrate Kwanzaa, playing African drums. My name is Obari because my dad picked it out of an African name. So we was in a house where we talk about blackness the whole time. And then when I got into psychology, I realized that there was a whole field of people talking about black people and mental health and trauma and culture and all that kind of stuff. And so I was done with that. As soon as I found out that there was a field of people just talking about black health, black mental health and culture, then, and I could talk about it and do it and do programs around it, and then people gonna pay me for it, like it was easy, for me to figure out. But the pathway is, it's not just, my field is psychology, but there's a lot of different ways to get into it, through social work, through counseling. There's a lot of movements towards the peer lived experience experts. So even folks that don't want to go through to getting the licenses and degrees and all that, just based on your own experiences, there's lots of need for people to just create space for black men to sit together and heal, do peace circles, to restorative justice. There's a bunch of different angles to get into it. So if y'all are interested in that, I really encourage y'all really to explore that. I'm not connected to the Kennedy King program so much. I don't know if any of y'all students at the school, but everybody's got, different programs for mental health, and we need more people to be talking about the black male experience in particular. It's just it was a natural progression for me to doing the stuff I love to do, connecting with people, listening and solving problems, and like the real problems. Like some people solve different kind of problems, like how do you get the streets to run and the water to flow and the electricity, and those different kind of problems. I was always interested in internal emotional problems. When I would see people who was going through a lot of, when they had, you could tell people having a rough day, they got burdens, they sad or they grieving something, or they having relationship conflicts or whatever it was. I was always just genuinely interested in trying to figure that out. And I'd be real nosy too. Like we want to get into people's business and try to figure out what's going on and get all this other stuff. It was just a natural fit for therapy for me because of the things I already into. So find that, whatever it is, find the thing that you just love to do. If you wake up in the morning and want to do it all day, if it's just something that's just tugging at your spirit, there's lots of career options. But a lot of times I'm talking to black men, and there's just 3 or 4 things that black men are trying to do. I hear a lot of basketball players and football players and YouTubers and entertainers, and even now, even some of the trade kind of stuff, the trucking and electricity. We need people in all of that, but there's a hole in the field of mental health workers that we need y'all for. People call me every day looking for therapists. I can't take them no more. I ain't got no space on my caseload. I be sending people to Antonio. There's maybe 2 or 3 other black men in the city that I can send them to, but we need 100. We need 1,000. We need thousands of black men trained to do therapy, to hold circles, to do this, so we're gonna really put a dent in the trauma that we've experienced. So everybody going through some stuff, but we need people to be holding the space to help us process that. And if that's you, we need you urgently. So.
Got the question?
Yeah. I guess my perspective is similar to Obari's. When I was 14, I knew I wanted to be a therapist. I didn't really know what a therapist was. I just knew you get paid money to talk to people, right? That was in its most simplest forms. But also, I wanted to understand what was happening in my community. Like, why was my uncle waking up in cold sweats, right, sitting on the porch at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Why did, when I walked down the street, I had this feeling of I'm always on the lookout for danger, right? I got to protect myself. And then when I'm walking with my father, he's telling me, hey, Durrell, when you walk, make sure you always look for a weapon, right? Look for something that you can pick up, do what you need to do, and get out the situation. Like, why was these the story that he was telling me, the lessons I was learning? It was about survival. Right? My family, we were surviving, right? We weren't thriving. We were trying to wake up, eat, and then get to the next day. And I wanted to do better than that. So quite honestly, yes, business is booming because it's not a lot of us. My graduating class for my master's program was me as the only black male, and everyone else was a white woman or a white male, mostly white women, honestly. And then in my PhD program right now, it's me. I'm the black male face. So if you want to get into this field and make some good money, you should do it. And also, if you just like to, I really don't talk to people for a living. I know I'm doing it now, but I really listen to people for a living. And then I ask questions, and then I help them ask themselves questions. And I don't give advice either. It's a thing. I would never tell another black man what they should do. You know what you should do. I'm just trying to help you think through the problem. So that's why I got into it.
I told you, I got into it by accident, but what I enjoy from it most is being there for people. You know, a lot of times people ask you how you doing, they say good, they not. You know what I mean? But when you can really be there for people, it'd be crazy how people could be in the world and like they feel like they don't have anybody that just listen to them. It's a lot of people that I just talk to. It's real people that I just talk to. They just want me to listen to them. They don't need nothing clinical. They don't need nothing. They just want to be heard and not judged. I can't stress enough what they already said. You know, black men as therapists represent 1% of the entire profession. Every black therapist I know is in this room except for maybe 4. We got Aaron with the Grow community. We got Brandon Hay. He came up from Canada, man. I want to say, man, I appreciate you so much, yo. We got Raymond in training, drove up here from Ohio. Like, it's needed. It's needed so bad, but we have to be a system of working together, you know, and just building that community, because I think a lot of times we do stuff in silos. So once again, what they said is not only would I stress that it's needed, but we need to make sure that we're doing it together and building community. You need a system to go up against the system. You know, we don't just need one. We need a system of funneling a bunch of black men to become therapists.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've got some great questions up here, but this next question, I really want you guys to be what we would call possibly vulnerable. I believe you guys are going to get, and we're all going to get more out of this if we can understand from the professional's perspective how we can identify certain things for ourselves. So the next question is, what is your trauma? What is the trauma of the professionals? Because if they can identify their trauma for us and tell us how to identify that, I think we may get something from a personal experience versus some of the professional verbiage that we may not understand. So what is your trauma? And how did you look at trauma when you first discovered it versus after you treated it or decided to deal with it? So what is your trauma? And I want the panel to be vulnerable, so I want y'all to tell us the truth, because we're going to know if y'all not telling us the truth. What is one of your traumas? And just one of them, I would imagine. And how did you look at it when you first identified it versus after you decided to do something about it? And you guys can take that question in any order.
I'll go.
Don't be shy.
No, I want to kind of put it in the most simplest, form, right? Because it was kind of quite complicated. But my trauma, I didn't know until I was like 24, 25, I'm 34 now, was my father was left when I was 3, and then he popped back up when I was around 9 or 10. And people say, oh, you were just a kid, you don't really remember that, right? I don't know, you're not aware of those things. But I didn't recognize that until I started being reactive, right? Well, I started noticing I was being reactive. I told you all the story about my father say, hey, find something, to hit somebody and move away, right? It was also like that when, I was in school. If I felt like, someone was going to get me, I was going to go. I was angry, right? I was very angry. And when somebody asked me, what's wrong with you? I say, I'm mad, I'm angry. And then we realized that anger it's always something else attached to it. Always some shame, some embarrassment, some loneliness, some hopelessness. It's always those things. So I had to figure out what was the emotions tied up to that trauma. And then when you take that trauma, then you start noticing a lot of other things. So, what's the second part of the question?
How did you look at it how did you look at it when you first saw it versus how you cope with it?
Oh, when I first saw it, it was shame. It's like, wait, I'm letting something like that bother me? I'm good. Like, why do I care about that? That happened so long ago. Me and my father are good now, right? We've been good for a long time. I call him right now, we're good. But it was still confusing. Why do I care about that? So, I got a therapist. I am a therapist with a therapist, and I'm going to have a therapist for a long time. I believe in it. So, talking it over with my therapist, I'm trying to figure out, why is this bothering me? What's happening? And then when you figure out the emotions that's tied to it, you also see those emotions in other aspects of your life. So while you may have some shame, some loneliness, some hopelessness, that's from that event that happened when you were 3 to 9.
It's also playing out in your current relationships. And then there's usually negative consequences to that. So anything that in that moment, like now, anything that, well, not now, but up until now, anything that reminds me of having that feeling again, those feelings associated with that experience, I want to avoid. I want to run away from that as quickly as possible. If I feel like you're going to leave me, then I don't need you close enough. So that, things like that, therapists help you explore.
I would say mine is closely related to attachment. I think mine was, and once again, it's the experience. I'm an overthinker, so I overthink a lot of things, right? So when I was 8, my grandparents raised me, and I grew up in Bellwood, and my mom lived in Hillside. My dad lived maybe 6-7 blocks away from me, and he got married, and he had raised my stepmom kids and my little brother, and my mom had raised my little sister. And I kept wondering, why y'all didn't raise me? And it left me feeling, I used to wish I could tell them, I used to wish I could say that they was on drugs and my dad was in jail or was running the streets. And it was yo, he 5 blocks away. You know what I'm saying? I used to hate the fact that I would see him in the park and he'd be coaching other kids. You know what I'm saying? And versus and missing my game because he coaching them. And so, I used to wish man, there was a reason, versus just feeling like people didn't choose me. And I see the way it shows up in the way I date women. It's yo, you gotta like me. I wanna be chosen. I wanna show that you're not gonna leave. And then I'm gonna put you to the test and treat you bad. And then when you leave, because I treated you bad, I'm gonna internalize that. And I used to internalize that as, nobody wants me. I always felt there's nobody's gonna love me the way God will. I feel like everybody's seasonal. You know what I mean? You could be my ace, my man, $100,000 now. You know what I'm saying? And then years later, we're not speaking. And so the way I interpret that now is that my thoughts influence my behavior. that because I thought everyone was going to leave, it's like when I went through stuff or when I needed stuff, I didn't use my words. I shut down and went away. I wouldn't let you be there. Or I would treat you bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just treat people however you want to treat them and think that they're going to be there. You know, so I think with my attachment, I had to learn how to accept love from those who showed me there were healthy people to love. You know, I think in a way I'm still looking at that, but I look at a lot of it was me isolating. When I go through something, I isolate. Because every time I went through something, I got myself out of it. So the way I look at it now is that I can't isolate, that I have to go against the grain. I have to talk to friends. I have to be vulnerable. You know what I mean? I have to go out and do something outside of me. You know, and just like he said, now there's a difference between therapy and being therapeutic, you know, which is something that we're going to talk about later. But I really had to tap into like therapeutic. Hey, most of the men here are like men of Phi Beta Sigma. It's not a frat thing. It's like, that's my lifeline. Like, sometimes I'm trying to make sense of things that I don't know what it is that I'm feeling, and they help me get the language for it. So that's how I see it then and now.
Mike. Here we go. I appreciate the question, man. I think it's a dope question in a forum like this, because we often get invited to talk about this from a professional perspective, right? But the value of the vulnerability that the brothers are expressing is that we're not in this field like for work. This is personal for us. Right, we do this because we've been through it, and we've been through dark times, and now can help other people come out of it. I'm doing this for my son. Like, this ain't work. This is a life mission, right? And all of it is fueled by my personal experiences. And for me, when it ain't like one trauma, it's just a life. Life is just shitty. Like, it's just the ups and downs are just a part of it. You never get to a place. Ain't no money don't fix it. Ain't no amount of respect fix it. Like, life is just gonna come at you fast, and so you got to be ready and have skills and be grounded and have principles and all of that. So I've learned that through my own personal experiences of. I think the most lingering thing for me is the anxiety that I have from so much loss. I've had a lot of loss in my life. My childhood was good. We was poor when we was kids, but I my dad, I had a real good father. He protected me from all the stuff that, you might would experience growing up in the hood. We moved out to the suburbs when I was maybe my son's age. So I had a good family, right? But it wasn't until I became an adult, and I tell young people a lot, people be rushing to grow up. My life got hard when I became an adult. That's when shit got real tough. And it was the first thing was when I lost my father. I was young 20s, and he drowned. So it was a sudden loss, right? He was on a boat with a friend of his, and the friend came back, and my dad didn't. All I got is a story. It's a story I don't even believe. So it's a mystery. Like, I don't even know how he actually. My dad was a lifeguard. He was a scuba diver. Like, he was, he knew the water. So for him to drown was a real shocking thing for our family, and it just caused lots of chaos. My dad had some extramarital affairs, so he had 3 different kids from 3 different mothers, and then they banded together to sue my mother, who was still married to my father, and it just caused a lot of chaos. My mother folded under the pressure of all the things, the loss and the shame and the depression. It turned into an early dementia for my mother. So she's still alive, but like, she's not really, like, she don't speak no more. I got a kid, I'm about to go, when I leave here, to go feed her. Like, I got to feed my mother and like wipe her ass. Like, she's become like a baby in the house. So it's a constant reminder of the things that my father did to cause the chaos in my family that have left me just wondering, at what point do you either lose your life or lose your mind at a moment's notice? And I live with that sort of anxiety around just, people call it FOMO, right? I'm always doing stuff. Part of it's because I feel like at any moment this whole thing ends. And then I had some professional problems, personal problems, social problems. When I was young, 20-something, I had a false accusation when I was living in Atlanta that haunts me still. It came back around in a petition a couple years ago. Like, at any moment, I feel like I could lose my career, my life, my memory, all of it. And so that anxiety is something it's not a moment, like, it's just a state of being. And it's not like, you just live with it, really. Like, you find ways to make life worth it. If I'm going to die tomorrow, I'm going to make sure that today I made the best of it. And so I live with that, and it propels me to do things that, you know, help me savor the moment, help me do work that I think is impactful, not feeling like I got time to waste, so I don't be sitting around twiddling my thumbs a lot. Like, I really just be out here trying to enjoy life, to get the rest I need to get, and have a healthy balance. But a lot of it is motivated by the idea that at any moment, I had an older sister last year. She died so quick, we couldn't pull the family together enough to do a funeral for her. It was like, all right, well, maybe we'll do a memorial on her birthday. We couldn't even get that together. Like, it was just it wasn't even COVID. Like, we still don't even know what it was. Her mama didn't want to do an autopsy, so I ain't even got like no obituary for her. Like, we just never acknowledged my oldest sister's death. My son was with us. Like, we saw her on Friday, and then she didn't answer the phone on Saturday, and went to the house on Sunday, and it was just a body on the ground. Like for me, like, life is like that. Like, life is just, you never know what's gonna happen. And at any moment, everything, you know what I'm saying, my things will be good right now, but the next day. So I live with that. Like, I live with this sense that at any moment, everything leaves. So for me, it's not a professional thing. It's really just when I'm doing therapy, when I'm doing groups, when I'm having, you know, conversations, it's me inviting other men along this journey of life I ain't saying I'm an expert in manhood or life, or I ain't figured it all out. Like, I'm just trying to do my best to stay afloat like everybody else is, trying to survive and thrive and not survive, trying to really just do something meaningful. And I'm just inviting people along, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't therapize people. We've read a bunch of books and got a bunch of theories, but like, the thing that really helps us do this work is our life experience and our genuine desire to help us win, help us be free, and help us, you know what I'm saying, live a life that we are destined and deserve. So I appreciate the question. I appreciate, you know, the opportunity to really talk about the personal stuff in this, because ain't none of it's professional for me. This is all, you know, life mission. So that's my story.
Audience, I want you to give the panel a round of applause for that. And I want to thank you, professional gentlemen, because I think that question there and their response kind of sets a tone. Something that was said kind of resonates with all of us, or puts us in the mindset of, if these professionals studied, postgraduate degree men can be that vulnerable and understand and identify what they're dealing with, then I believe we can too, and we can possibly get more out of this process and continue to trust the process. The next question is similar, and this was going to be directed more so towards the audience and the black community at large. Why has mental health been taboo with black men? And if we can go from, we'll come any way you want with the question. I'm not going to direct you any further with it, but why is the stigma of going to see someone as a black man so taboo? And by taboo, I mean talked down, laughed at, made a joke of. Why is that? And you can take it in any order that you choose.
I think it's the way that we come into contact with social workers. Usually it's through the criminal justice system. Usually when you go to the criminal justice system, then you have to go see a mental health counselor, you have to go see a mental health, counselor, substance abuse counselor. Usually that's the interaction. The interaction is based off a demand. You hit your person, then you have to go to domestic violence counseling. You know, and once again, all of those things get lumped up into a social worker. Like, I'm a social worker, but so is a counselor, a case manager. And so part of me, I think that it's mandated, and it's exposure, because once again, black men represent 1%. I'm gonna keep saying it. Black women represent 3%. Which, y'all, look at those numbers. That means everybody else is doing it. You know, when we look at mental health and like it's an issue with us, everybody else was doing it. They was doing it when they had slaves. They was over here beating on Kunta and then going to therapy and talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've been doing it. No, for real. They've been doing it. And everything we going through, and like we just starting, but that's my opinion of what I think, because I think it's usually correlated to criminal justice, and that's how we attach it. I don't need to go there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's usually something that's conditioned to, you have to go there because of something that you did.
It's genetic also. So when Kunta was getting lashed, he was told to be quiet, right? Don't make too much noise. Just take it. Fast forward, 2023, we're still told to be quiet, shut up, don't make too much noise, be quiet, just take it. So when someone says, hey, you need to go talk to somebody, no, I'm good, I got it, cool. I'm just gonna hoop, right? I'm gonna go to the gym. You know, I'm gonna go over old girl house. Yeah, but you should explore your thoughts and feelings. And then yes, when we do come in contact with a therapist, it's usually mandated. I have a rule across the board. I do not meet with anyone who is required to meet with me. Like, I just don't want to work in those spaces ever again. It should be a choice. And also, another piece is insurance is complicated. Like, it's expensive to go to therapy. Yes, the other 99% of people are doing it because the insurance is like, it's written and worded for the way that they understand things. So you have to sit with someone to help you through that process, and then after that complicated process, then you still need to see if you're motivated to go sit in front of a therapist. And you need to find a therapist. I'm booked. If someone here wanted to see me today, it's tough, honestly. But you can go see a white woman tomorrow.
I think it's a couple things for me that come to mind. I do believe there's still some things in the black male culture that makes us feel like we got to hold everything in the end again, the Superman kind of idea that we got to be tough, you know what I'm saying? That there's a weakness connected to our idea of vulnerability. And I don't usually use vulnerability often. I use the word honest. Like, for me, it ain't about being weak. It's just about being, life is what it is. Everybody get dinged up. Everybody got their ups and downs. So we got to be honest about that. We're saying keep it a buck for real. Like, for real, just mean saying what happened, and being honest about how it impacted us. But I also know that there's a pressure as men to hold it all together. My son ain't gonna see me crumble. He'll see me cry sometimes, but like, in my darkest times, he had no idea. He had no idea. I went through some of the darkest moments when he's sitting right next to me. And that pressure is real. Like, I think that we got to hold it together oftentimes. If you got women in your life, if you got kids in your life, you got your friends in your life even, there's a pressure that we put on ourselves sometimes to make it seem like we not impacted by just the normal day-to-day stuff that happens. And I think we got to do that work to shed that pressure on ourselves and find some safe spaces to be able to let it go for a moment. And I ain't saying it all the time. I don't want men to be like, okay, just because my feelings get hurt at work, you start crying when your boss, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to hold it together. Sometimes you got to put on the front. If you know what I'm saying, somebody make fun of your shoes and you start whining, like, then you really gonna get, you know what I'm saying? So there is a reality that there are some certain moments when we have to posture. We got to put on a certain front, wear a certain mask to make it through the day. That can't be 24 hours a day. You got to find some time to, at least in your own self, in your own journal, in your own closet, you got to cry in the car, you got to find some way to be honest enough to say that this hurts and it's impacted me in ways that if I keep ignoring it, or if I keep drinking it, or if I keep smoking it, if I keep sexing it, if I keep distracting myself from it, it's just going to build up, and it's going to implode inside of me, and at some point you're going to pay the damage. Like, at some point it's going to come back and haunt us. So that's a male culture thing that we got to deal with. That's on us. We as the professionals have a work to do to make the field more accessible, as they've talked about, and also culturally appropriate for us. I got a PhD in white psychology, real clear. I went to school, read a bunch of old white men, the Freuds and Skinners and Youngs, and then I had to come out back to the South Side and do therapy in a way that does not fit what we need. The therapy is designed to help us cope and manage and go back to school and go back to work, and that's not what we need. We need to heal for real. We need generations of trauma in our DNA to be removed so that we can really see and become who we're supposed to be. And the therapists aren't trained to do that kind of work. We have to do other stuff outside of the school assignments, read other books other than what we were required to do to get the licenses and keep the licenses. Like, we have to do a different thing in the field to make sure that when y'all come to us, we meeting you where you at, and we're not making you feel like something wrong with you, right? Black men tired of being judged and feeling like now I go to another helper, and he's just gonna give me another label to say something wrong with you again, and not saying something wrong with this whole system. The system is sick. The mental health is a part of that sick system. system, and then we have to change these systems if we're going to do work that's actually meaningful for us, and not just begin a check. There's some therapists that are getting a check. They come in, they do what they're supposed to do, they get the insurance, and they write the diagnosis and the treatment plan, and then they send you back home to deal with a broken community, right? So we have to think about mental health in a different way than we were taught. We have to think about what does it mean to be black and African and cultural in the mental health field, and I think part of the stigma has been a healthy distrust of these systems. I think there's a healthy distrust when you go into a place and you feel like somebody's gonna label you and diagnose you or give you some medicine that ain't gonna work, or give you some, and when I say medicine, I think about medicine much bigger than just a pill. People making money off of the sickness. There's profit from the sickness. But we talking about healing, there's going to be a whole different approach to it. And I think that's how we reduce the stigma and the taboos, is by making it a different thing for us, because America cannot fix the problem that it caused. All of the white women therapists, they can be nice and kind and gentle, and they can help you solve a problem and cope with things, but they can't help us heal from the impact of what Kunta Kinte went through. Like, that's not, they're not trained for that. So we got to find different ways of thinking about what therapy even looks like. So I be doing drum circles, playing music, we be outside, we be doing movement and music, stuff that we naturally do as a people that we have to now bring back into the therapeutic space to give y'all back the expertise, so that y'all don't think that I gotta wait till my brother waiting list get cleared so that I can begin the healing process. We need to just make that normal everyday activity. We need to have a culture of wellness, and not go into an office where somebody supposedly has a better, more expert view of this than you do, and instead we need to just make it just what we do, because that's what we had. That's how we got here. We survived the rough side of the mountain through some of these healing practices that now the system has tried to certify and license and make it seem like you can't do it on your own, and that's not true. Y'all got to take the healing power back into the communities and not wait for the panel of experts to say, no, go right, go, you know what I'm saying, go try some yoga, go try some meditation, just go sit at your grandmama's house and get back to Sunday dinners, like just natural stuff that we used to do that we've lost over time, and some of it was taken from us deliberately because of the systems of oppression. That's what causes depression. Oppression causes depression, and if we don't fix that, then we're just gonna be talking all day.
Okay, here's where we take out our pens or open our phones. The next set of questions are going to give us some answers to define everything that we've talked about thus far. So here's where you really want to pay attention to make sure that you get something out of what you're sitting here to get today. And really pay attention, because these are the common questions that we need to know as black men around this question of therapy. And I'm kind of struggling with which direction, or there's like three of them, but I want to put them in an order that's going to be, so let's just deal with them as the professional gave me these questions. I don't want y'all to think I made up this stuff. The professionals gave me the questions, so I need to stay on task. The next question: what is the difference between therapy and therapeutic? Dr. Martin Luther King said in one of his speeches, we got to get the language right. So in order to talk about therapy, we need to know the difference between therapy and therapeutic. Panel, feel free to take that in any order.
I had mentioned it earlier. I think that I overindulge in therapeutic things, but I think that we need to really identify. I'm going to answer the question and stick to it. Therapeutic is, you talking to somebody at the barbershop, you going somewhere, it makes you feel better, right? Therapeutic is going to the gym. Therapeutic is like hanging with friends and, anything that you do that may be self-care is really just coping. It's just something that makes you feel better organically about what it is that you're doing. Therapy is therapy. Therapy is exploring what it is that you feel, and where does that come from? What is attached to in your experience? How has it impacted you? How do we redefine it? What's the narrative? Therapy is always going to be exploratory. Therapeutic is always going to be just helping you manage. Like sometimes you can work a job that you hate, but you just do enough to keep working at it. You find the little things, like I got to do it for my family. That's therapeutic. Therapy would be like, yo, is this the career I want to be in? Is this my life purpose? You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. A lot of times therapeutic just helps us manage it. That's how I would say it in the short version. I think a lot of times I looked for like social engagement or to do certain things to sort of make me feel better versus exploring, but that's because I'm an overthinker, but I want to stay on track, I think.
Therapeutic is something happening and you go into the strip club for 5 days a week, right? You managing it that way. You have a lot of anxiety, so you go to the basketball court, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, for the midnight run. That's therapeutic. Or you sit in front of TV and you watch old episodes of Martin, Jamie Foxx. Therapeutic. It's helping you manage all the stresses of the day. But yes, therapy is a little different. You want to figure out what's your why, and you want to figure out what's the intentionality behind your behaviors and how you're managing the stress. And then you want to know, wait, are there positive or negative consequences to the things that I'm doing? You go to the strip club for 5 days a week, where's your money? You in front of the TV all day, watching old episodes of whatever, you're not working on that business plan that you set out to do. Or, incorporating that LLC that you've been planning on doing for a long time. So it's different. Quite honestly, both are needed. You need things that are therapeutic, but you also need to make sure you know the consequences of the behavior and the things that you're doing. So if you're going to the gym, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays for the midnight run, you get into shape. You're inviting some of your guys, okay? You building that you keeping that bond strong. It's therapeutic. But why are you doing it?
I would say there's two things that I would say is the distinction between therapy and therapeutic. The first is, all the stuff that they're describing around the therapeutic things are things that feel good, particularly in the moment. Therapy don't always feel good. Sometimes therapy hurt. Right, you got to go to the deep, dark places and then come back out of them if you're doing therapy. Right? Sometimes you need to go, things will get darker before they get lighter. That's what therapy is. Sometimes you have to face yourself and uncover those things that you've been avoiding, those things that you've tucked away, those things that you've hidden, you've run from. You got to run towards them now, and all of it ain't gonna feel good. You might be crying in your therapy session, not so much at the strip club, right? The therapy feel good. Therapeutic things feel good. Therapy is a harder work. It's a commitment. And the second thing that I would say is the distinguishing point is the short term versus long term. So the therapeutic things, they feel good in the moment. They help you feel better while you're doing them, maybe a little bit afterwards. The therapy is a process that you commit to where you have a goal you want to set for yourself, just like any other goal, academic goal or financial goal. It's an emotional, mental, spiritual goal that you want to achieve a thing. You want to get to a place, and then a therapist will help you walk you through that process. So I want to get to a place where I am not drinking no more, or whatever it is that you want to do. So you set therapeutic goals in therapy that help you achieve a thing that, just like a personal trainer would. I want to lose a certain amount of weight. I want to look a certain thing. It ain't going to happen in the moment. It's going to happen through a process, through a commitment, through discipline, and it's going to be an unfolding of a thing that happens over time. And you know it's happening because there's an achievable goal with therapy. Therapeutic is not a goal so much. You kind of just doing it because it feels good. But that's the thing. And the thing that I want us to be careful about is that there are ways that we can find the expertise in other places than the licensed clinical folk. That capitalism has made us want to hold on the therapy process so that you can come to us to pay for it. But in the shortage, in the moment when we not even available, we got to figure out some other, and we collectively as a group, we got to figure out some other way to provide that process of therapy that can happen through reading or book clubs or long-term commitments, something that we can do together to unfold, to achieve goals that can still be like what happens in the therapy office. office while we also doing things that feel good, the self-care stuff. We got to do that stuff too. But it ain't, the goal for me ain't to feel good. The goal for me is to win. We got to elevate, right? And sometimes feeling good ain't the thing that's going to get us in that towards that. So those are the distinctions for me: the feeling good and the long term versus short term.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. I hope y'all taking notes or putting messages in your phones. This information here is going to make us different black men when we leave here. And I just want to drop a little note on you. You're going to have a responsibility now, because we're being given information to help us start a process that some of us have not started. So I really want you young folks especially to pay attention. Now this next question, and I think, Antonio, you dealt with it a minute ago within the therapy versus therapeutic, but what are coping skills? And I also want y'all to know that y'all getting a whole lot of information. Durrell said therapy is expensive. So they're actually giving us information for free on this panel if we're paying attention. What are coping skills and what can they look like? Okay, so what I heard is therapeutic, kind of this. So if we can go into some details, panel, with what are coping skills when we're feeling a certain type of way, when we're dealing with some types of things and we don't know exactly from a professional perspective because we haven't been to a therapist what to do. What are some coping skills that we can do when we're feeling a different way? And if we could line that up with maybe anger, when I'm feeling angry, when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling depressed, when I'm feeling any kind of way, what are some coping skills and what can they look like?
I'll start. I'm going to start backwards, actually. The first thing I want us to think about doing when life gets tough, when you're feeling angry or sad or anxious, is to first be aware of what not to do, because there are things that we do in the name of coping that, as we've talked about before, cause more problems. If you're using sex for coping, now you got a baby, now you got real stress, right? If you spend all your money at the casino or playing cards, right, or gaming online, it might feel therapeutic in the moment because you're distracted, you smoking, you popping, y'all popping pills that used to be white people stuff when I was y'all age, right? Y'all know stuff y'all don't even know what it is. And in the moment, it feels like coping. It might even feel good. It might feel like it's therapeutic. People say all the time, smoking is my therapy. But if afterwards you have not dealt with the problem and you cause new problems, then the first step is to remove the easy, what seems like, I would call the illusion of coping. And men got a lot of them. We got a lot of stuff we go to. That in the moment it's quick, it's easy, my friends are doing it, it's everywhere I can go. But those things that help us, and I keep using the word cope, it's not cope, it's really not actually cope, it's really distract, right? It's really just like remove the moment of the pain. We have not developed enough internal fortitude sometimes to sit with the pain sometimes. And I think that we need to stop distracting ourselves from those moments and really to sit with them for a while. Just really be present in the pain so that you can now develop some new coping skills to help manage the moment and solve the problem. So for me, I encourage everybody to journal if you can. I need to do it more, right? But I know when I do it, what happens is I'm carrying the anxiety. I got a lot on my mind. I'm overthinking like Antonio. I was thinking about it over and over again, and it gets stuck in my brain in this loop and this cycle. But as soon as I put it on paper, it could be on text, it could be on actual paper. As soon as I get it out of my head, then I feel like I relieved myself the burden of having to hold it in my memory, and then I can move on. I can do something else. So journaling, writing it down, expressing yourself in some way, finding some container to put it in. It could be a person. The reason journaling is better is because you're not dumping your stuff on somebody else and then they holding it for you, right? That's why therapists are good, because we designated containers. You can dump on me all day. I'll take it. I can hold it. I have my own process of dealing with the things that you put on me, but your friend might not. Like your mother might not. Your girlfriend might not. Which is why if you write it down, sometimes that by itself will just get it out of your head, out of your heart, and then you could have the space to be able to figure out what to do. But I think we need a bunch of stuff, like, going for walks, going to sit by the lake, watching funny things, spending time with your kids, just like movement. Sometimes I'll dance in my house just for no reason. I'll wait for ain't nobody there, put some music on. I don't care what I look like. I'm just sweating, like just it's stuff that we might be silly, just to get the movement going. Sometimes you got to sweat some of the stuff out. But coping strategies like the breathing techniques, meditation, mindfulness, all those things are things that black men typically have not done. But it's really just simple things. Like a lot of it, we took therapy expensive, but the coping stuff can be free. You just got to find things that work for you. I use music a lot, whether you're creating it or listening to it. Music, movement, expression, those are some of the things that come to mind. And again, not doing those things that cause more problems. Creating, doing something with your hands. You might even get back into coloring, like drawing. It's like the stuff that kids naturally do. You watch kids, they go through all emotions. They get mad, they get sad, but then they have a thing that they do to distract themselves from it that's not causing new problems. If food is your go-to, right, try to find some healthy way to do it. It might be the process of cooking itself. And I said sex in the beginning, but like touch, it could be massages, as long as it's consensual, as long as you're not using people. Like having closeness, intimacy is something that helps me feel better too. I just gotta make sure it's not causing more damage later down the line. But you want to have 10 things. Like sometimes music ain't gonna help you, sometimes balling ain't gonna help you, sometimes going for a walk, it might be too cold to go to the lake. So you want to have a bunch of things in your toolkits. You want to try this. If that don't work, try that. But you always want to make sure that it's healthy. You want to make sure it's productive, and it's not always just the quickest, easiest thing to do, because there's traps inside of those that are designed to keep us cycling in place. We got to be careful about that.
Above all, we should know our triggers. Like, what are the things that, like the buttons people can push to cause you to react, like, quickly? Like, what are the things? Is it your hair? Is it your face? Is it your shoes? Is it somebody talking about your mama, your dead auntie, whoever? What's the thing? If you don't know that, and I'm also coming into the space with a lot of stress, and I'm coming to the space feeling a lot of different ways, I'm gonna find the button and I'm gonna push on it. Now I control you. I know how to ruin your day by just pushing on your buttons and finding your triggers. So how do you cope with that? How do you stop yourself from reacting, which usually leads to, again, negative consequences, and versus responding? That's where you get the coping strategies. So I do this intervention with, some people in therapy. I need you to identify 10 coping strategies, but that are unique to you. Not the ones that, I ain't getting to that, but the ones that are unique to you. So for me personally, I jump rope, that's one. I go to the gym, that's another one. I go for a bike ride, another one. I call my wife and I just talk about, the day and all the bad things that happen. I call my boy Ifu in the back, right there. I talk to him. We play Call of Duty at some point. I call my boss if it's something at work and I say, hey, this is what's going on, whatever. So I use my village. So find 10 things that work for you that don't necessarily lead to negative consequences. And I think we've mentioned negative consequences a couple times here, but that's no money, right? That's now you are doing some things with somebody you ain't supposed to be doing them with. Now you're jeopardizing some of your relationships. Now you somewhere you're not supposed to be at 3 o'clock in the morning. Negative consequences. Now you're losing your job. Now you might get fired, right? Negative consequences. Positive consequences are I'm riding my bike, I'm getting in shape. Right, I'm staying limber. Jumping rope, I'm burning calories. I'm playing a game, I'm building a stronger bond with one of my guys. Positive consequences. Your coping strategy should be based off the positive consequences. I journal also. It's another one, but it's in a different way, right? I journal with intentionality. So school has been really easy for me for a long time. Like, you tell me something, I remember it. It's easy. But the problem with that is I have too much stuff in my brain. It's just too much. It causes anxiety. So I need to take it and sort it out. And I need to look at how silly it is sometimes. So I write it all down. I'll read it back. I make sense of it, ball it up, and throw it away. It's a coping strategy.
I love everything they said. I want to say that it's also important that you pay homage to your coping skill. A lot of times you develop your coping skill because you're in survival mode. You're going through something, you don't know how to deal with it. This is a professor I took at University of Chicago, Mark Sanders. He always said, whenever the addiction started, that's usually when the trauma happened. A lot of time, whatever our habits are, the ways that we cope, it was something that we inducted into our way of life to help us deal with a situation that we can't handle. And before we can replace that coping skill, you need to understand the place that it puts in your life. It's not just about doing something different, it's why you're doing something different. Everybody smokes weed, they smoke for different reasons. Some people smoke so they don't put their hands on you. Some people smoke because it gives them anxiety. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same drug, so it's not just about replacing it and doing something else, but understanding the way it services you. I would drink till I blacked out. The reason I was drinking is because my mind would race. I had to understand what my coping skill was. It wasn't just about not drinking. It was, okay, now I'm doing something else. It's not helping my mind from racing. So now I got 4 kids, I work, I got my own business, I'm doing stuff all day, every day, and people like, you do too much. That's because I'm trying to organically tire my mind out. I'm trying to put it to use. I had to understand why I was coping. I wasn't drinking to socialize. I drink by myself. Because my mind races and just thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks. But I had to understand what my coping skill was. It's like, man, when I can't shut it off, how do I do it? And I didn't have the skills. So in understanding what your coping skills are, it's about being aware of how it services you. Not just replacing it, but identifying what it does to soothe you. And then find an alternate method that's able to facilitate that same effect. And the second thing I was saying in closing is that you're coping voluntarily or involuntarily all the time. The purpose of what we're talking about, you need to be intentional on how you're coping. If you're not aware of how you're coping, you're doing something. If you don't think, like, when you have a bad day, if you don't think about what you do, if you don't know what it is, then you're doing it involuntarily. And we need to figure what that is. But once we figure out what it is, it's not do something else. You have to understand it, because sometimes, like, how it helped you survive, it means something dear to you. Like, we don't understand that. Like, people that doing drugs, that drug got them through some pretty dark times. And then it's like, that's the other thing when we talk about coping. You have to practice it. Everybody's coping skills is different. You know what I'm saying? It's not an end-all, be-all for anger. You have to explore what gives you that feeling of release. It's not just about breathing if it don't release you. If you need to go hit a punching bag, then that's what you need to do. But you have to explore what gives you the effect of release to help you cope. You know what I mean? That takes assessment. That takes actually doing it. And then you have to practice it over and over again so that when you go through the bullshit, now it's there. Because usually what happens is that we do something. But when it gets really, really bad, we go back to what got us through. Hey, you know what? This going to the gym might work, doing a little jump rope. But when it get bad, hey, I know what's going, you know what I mean? I know what got me through before, and it gets hard not to revert back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. The next question, as black men, we wear a lot of hats, and you younger brothers will develop that, but you're actually wearing these hats too. As black men, we are told to be providers, we are told to be caregivers, we are told to be protectors. We wear a lot of hats, and then subconsciously sometimes deal with some things in our own way, as the panel has said. One of those hats is being able to help someone else when they come to us. So panel, I want to ask you the question, and maybe you can give the audience and myself some clarity on how do we help someone in crisis? How do we help someone in crisis? Now, I want the audience to know that you're going to leave here with some information that's going to put you in the responsible category, because this question here is going to give you the tools that you need to be able to ask further questions from Anchored in Wellness and Be Well after this, because I'm sure we're not going to be able to go too deep. But what we want you to get from this question is, what do you do when your boy comes in the lunchroom or he comes to class and he's not looking the same way? He's sitting in the corner and he's crying. What do you do when the brother that's usually quiet and peaceful at school is pacing or sweating or exhibiting certain things? What do you do when you get the call from the family member? When you got to go home and tell, or someone's calling you to say, I just lost my job, or I just lost a loved one. How do you help someone in crisis? And let me rephrase that, because I'm talking too much. I don't even know if any of those things I just said are crisis. So I'm not, let me rephrase that. Those things may not even be crisis, y'all, so I don't want to lead the panel. How do you just take that and store it, and if it fits, thank you. If not, I'm going to stay on task. But how do you help someone in crisis?
I think for me, like, the first boundary is knowing what's outside of you. You know, a lot of times we're trying to help people in a very vulnerable situation, and what they're going through is bigger than you, and we really do need to bridge them with getting the proper help that they need. I think that too often the issue is that we're trying to provide help to them. I remember when I had got divorced. I remember when she first left me, right? I remember coming home and she took all the stuff. It was like the last episode of Fresh Prince, but wasn't no furniture in the living room. Like, it wasn't nothing but my PlayStation, my TV, and a nightstand, because that's all I brought, right? So I'm sitting in the crib, I'm like, it's so empty in here. I called one of the fried up, like, man, come through. You know what I'm saying? He bring a fifth of some tequila. You know what I'm saying? We sit down, start talking. You know what I'm saying? Emotions get to me. I start crying. Hey, he ain't know what to do. This Mike hit me with the, all right, man, I'm gonna get up out of here. You gonna be all right? Straight like that. You feel me? Like, I look at the tequila bottle. You all I got now. So, but I put that on him. I'm like, man, he just left. He didn't know what to do with that. He wasn't even married at the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes we putting stuff on people and they don't know what to do with it. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't know what to do with that, bro. You need to go talk to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's not there. Maybe it's account. Hey, whatever it is, sometimes we need to make that referral. A lot of times we're not making that referral. A lot of times we think that just our friendship is enough to get that video that didn't play with Michael Beasley. That was the point that I was trying to make, is that sometimes we rely on our friends and family for something that is above their understanding. And it's not to be a superhero. It's to say, like, yo, I don't know how to, and make that connection. I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna pass it. I remember I was working in Maywood, and I was working for after school program. And this kid, he usually a buck kid. He always buck. Today, he like real mellow. So I could tell something wrong. Short version of the story. Hey, bro, what's going on? He said, I saw my dad hit my mom. Okay, you know, that's messed up. He was like, but the real issue is that the police didn't know who to believe. So, like, they interviewed me. They asked me, like, whose story is true in front of my dad. And he was like, you know, I told the truth. I said, I saw my dad hit my mom. And so they took my dad to jail. And so I'm like, you know, that's messed up, you know? But, you know, he'll get out. You know, I'm thinking he'll get out. He was like, he did get out. He came back last week. I said, so what's the issue? He said, ever since he came back home, he ain't been talking to me. What should I do? I don't know what to do about that. I mean, I think your dad is bogus, but I'm like, yo, there's some bogus people out here. There's certain situations we shouldn't go through, but we go through. And I remember at the time, I was like 25. I didn't know what to say to him. And he's, you know, like, I can't make your dad love you. I didn't know what to say. Hey, man, I had to call the domestic violence people, not to report the dad, just like, hey, what do I tell him? And they told me, hey, first of all, validate his experience. Don't tell him that it'll be all right, because it may not be all right. Let him know that his situation is bad. Let him know you may be a person that you can talk to and support, but don't sit there and make him think that his nightmare is reality or his nightmare is really a dream. You know what I mean? Don't normalize and say that it's okay and it's going to be okay, because it's not. I had to step outside of my scope of understanding. And sometimes people put stuff on us that's real heavy, and we just think because we give them a hug and we hold them, and like Obari was saying earlier, now they open up, now they in this dark place. Now we in this dark place, now I'm crying, I'm open, and you don't know what to do with it, and the hug ain't enough. And then you just leave, but it's still here in my mind. And the wrist do, and I ain't got nothing for you. You know what I'm saying? But then now it's not moving. Now it's just there. Now that leads to that self-suffering and going down the hill.
I think it depends on the different type of crisis. Right now I train a team of therapists on the west and south side of Chicago, and they mostly handle like mental health crisis, right? So someone says, I want to hurt myself, and then they go respond to it, right? And it's a whole plan that they have, a safety plan. They go through the whole process. They're trained to do these things. But those aren't the crises that we deal with on a normal day as black men. We deal with relationship crisis or financial crisis, or the crisis of being a black man and getting pulled over, once a week. Or someone, microaggressions, right? People automatically assume that you're a criminal and you haven't committed any criminal activities, right? It's a crisis, right? Usually when we're in that crisis, we go to people that care about us and that we care about them. We go to our friends and our family. And what they do, they sit with us, drink the tequila, they give us a hug, they tell him it's gonna be okay, they tell us, you'll be all right, it's cool, forget about that. They console us, and that's what they're there for. They should do that. But they're not the experts. Because the financial crisis, the rent is due, okay? The relationship crisis, you still miss old girl, right? Those things are still playing in your mind. How are you sorting through those things? So what I want you all to do is, yes, continue to be good, caring people, right? If you're an adult, drink the tequila with your friend. Give them a hug. Play the video game with them. Sit with them and just talk about old times. Like, keep doing those things. But before you leave that room, give them a referral. Recommend that they go see a professional. And then practice what you preach. Why aren't you in therapy? Something doesn't need to be like wrong with you. First of all, there's nothing wrong with any of you all in this room. It's just you're living life. So you should be honestly in therapy, especially as a black man. It's a lot of things that we go through that many people don't understand. And you should be able to recommend somebody for them.
I'm hearing this question going out to the helpers in the room. Those of y'all that not therapists or social workers, but just got a helping spirit. You see somebody down, you want to help them, you want to lift them up. And the first thing I want to say to us, those of us that have a helping spirit, is that it's really important that we have a balance for ourselves. There's a lot of kids I meet, I want to take them home. You know what I mean? I want to just give everything. I want to give if I gave my last dollar to a kid and I ain't got no more for my sons, then I can't sustain my helping. So we got to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves while we're putting ourselves in position to be able to help other people. So you got to have that balance. The saddest part about being in this profession is that we got to realize at a certain point that we can't help everybody. Particularly men. We're talking about grown men for real. There's only so much that you can do to lead somebody towards their own healing. You can give them all the referrals you want. You can give them all the suggestions. You can hold space. You can be there and provide. But at a certain point, somebody has to make the decision to receive that help and to do those things that they need to do for themselves. I've had to watch a lot of people just fall and just, I reach out and I'm here, I'm available. But if a grown man choose that they spiraling and that's the life they're gonna live, then at a certain point you gotta accept it and give them the space and pray that they're gonna come back to us at another time. I think the thing that we can do as a friends, as family members, as parents, as sons, to the people in our life that are struggling, is just the best message you want to give to people. Not Antonio, right? It isn't like a fake everything gonna be all right. Just hang in there, right? Because the truth is everything don't always turn out good. Some people die. Some people don't they heal their cancer. Some people never recover from the things that life throw at them. But whatever happens, if I got people in my life, my message to them is, whatever happens, good, bad, or ugly, I'm here for you. Anything I got that I can do within reason, within my own balance, I'm willing to give that to you. It ain't gonna be my last. I ain't gonna promise you my last. But if I got it, I'm gonna give it to you. If it's time, if it's resources, if it's referrals, if it's walking with you to the therapy session or to the yoga session or to the peace circle. If I feel like you need to take a walk instead of drinking tequila for this moment, we're gonna walk together. I'm not gonna give you the recommendation. I'm gonna say, come on, bro, let's get up, let's get out, let's go see a movie. Let's just go do something else. Just get our mind off of this. Every crisis is different. What happens when a person is in crisis is that they lose their mind a little bit, for real. Like you lose reason and logic. And if you somebody on the outside of it that you got a little bit more space, then you can provide just some comfort, some reason, and to help them make the decision in that moment that won't get them into a worse place. So sometimes it might mean like, I ain't gonna leave here with the bottle. I'm gonna stay here to make sure you don't drink too much. I ain't gonna fix all the problems. I ain't gonna try to make up something. If I ain't got nothing to say, I ain't got nothing to say. And I'll say that as a therapist. Some people come to me with stuff like, oh man, that's tough. I don't know, that's crazy. Let's explore some options together. But maybe in this moment, they might just need silence. They might just need space. And you just stand as a helper, as a friend, as a brother, that whatever you need, I'm here for it. Like, I got you. I ain't gonna sleep here for weeks, right? But if you need me to stay overnight, I stay. I'm gonna make sure you look it out for. But we gotta make sure we take care of ourselves too, because this is a long struggle. You want to sustain your helping, you can't deplete all your resources for the one friend, particularly that one friend that keep coming back to the same problems. We got to spread ourselves out and make sure we care for ourselves at the same time.
Thank you, gentlemen. And some of the things that you all shared, this next question is a follow-up. We're doing great on time, so we're going into some deeper questions now to give some specifics to the audience. And you guys have touched on some of the isms and systems and things in some of your answers already, but this question is going to be more in line with black men, black people, but specifically black men, because we deal with this the most. The question is, what are some ways you have maintained your sanity while enduring the different isms in your life? And we're talking about racism, classism, the Superman complex, stereotyped masculinity, etc. We can add into that violence that we see in our neighborhoods, dysfunctional relationships, drug addiction, or addictive behaviors. What are some of the ways that you all have used as the professionals to cope and keep your sanity as black men and therapists having the skills and the education to do so?
I truly believe I'm gonna let my counterparts correct me if I say wrong. Sometimes I think disassociating is a part of resilience. Like, sometimes there's nothing I can do about that situation. There's nothing. You know what I'm saying? COVID, it's in the air. I don't know. You catch it. You vaccinated. I'm not vaccinated, but we still both got it. I don't know. I don't focus. I told y'all, overthink. So I can't focus on something outside of my control. You know what I'm saying? I don't go down rabbit holes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't. So for me, it's disassociating. You know what I'm saying? I remember I was in a meeting with some white counterparts, and we were talking about, the youth getting pulled over. And I'm like, I don't even pay attention. I still get pulled over once a month. I got pulled over 3 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? It don't even register no more. You know what I mean? Because I can't have that type of stuff enter my atmosphere. And so I think disassociating in the way of that discerning of what I can't do anything about.
Tonio, could you define or tell us what disassociating is?
It's not thinking about it as if it's not there. Like, completely disassociating from the situation. Like, it's like, if you live in the hood, you hear gunshots every day. And you're like, oh, it's cool over here. Like, it don't bother you no more. You completely disassociate from something that may be an at-risk factor or something that's really messed up. Doesn't even impact you no more. It's just a part of life. It's something that you just accept and you just move around. You know what I mean? That's what disassociating is. And things I can't control, that's what I do. I just move around. It is what it is. I don't throw rocks at tanks. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm going to fight a battle, it has to be a way for me to win it. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, if I see the police, they pull me over, I don't give no fucks about the situation. I don't want to be on a t-shirt. I want to go home. Whatever I got to do to go home, I'm going to say it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to do it. I don't care about what it shouldn't be like. And as a black man, I shouldn't be going through this. Hey, man, I'm trying to get home. What you need? You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get home. I mean, one time I got pulled over with him. He wanted to fight the power. No, we're not. No, we are not. I'm going home. Chill out and answer the police. You know, but that's what I mean by disassociating. Like, yo, I focus on what it is that I can control. And I stay focused on that, and I don't let that impact me. Now, maybe I should acknowledge it, but in my version, I think that certain isms, I feel like certain isms, I can't change. If I can't change it, I move around it.
Most of us were born into a racist system, right? We were born into oppression. We were born into this idea of toxic masculinity, right? Which it's the idea where everything is going to be okay. I don't need any help. I got it. I'm a man, right? The whole Kunta example we gave earlier. But we can't change those things. So in our field, we have this thing called radical acceptance. So no matter what it is, we will accept it. You don't try to change it, because you don't have the power to, quite honestly, change racism. You don't have a problem, you have power to change any of those isms. But you do control how you respond to it. So when you see it and you experience it, you pay attention to it. Oh, okay. I keep getting pulled over because the prison industrial complex, right? That's why I keep getting pulled over. Or police were created to protect property and owners of property. That's why I keep getting pulled over, right? So when you understand the thing behind it, you can understand it, and it'll help you respond to it better. We can't do anything about the isms, but we can do something. We can respond to it differently.
I don't think we can change these systems overnight, but we can change them, though. I believe that we can do something about the things that are happening to our people. We're here in Black History Month celebrating those change agents that have done work. We've been, you know, we've had more difficult, you know what I'm saying, systems to operate in. We're not that far from having people still alive that we couldn't go to the same schools as some people, right? Whether we should or shouldn't is a different thing. But like, there was people during enslavement, there was like, this is what it is. We might as well just keep our head low and do the work, and you know what I'm saying? And at that same time, somebody was like, no, fuck this shit. We finna get out of this bitch. We finna do whatever we gotta do. Hell or high water, if I lose my life, right? We took part while we honoring these people is because they put their life on the line. The Fred Hamptons, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, they died for this in a way that we benefited from. And I don't want to be no martyr either. I want to see my kid have grandkids. I want to be here for that. Like, I want to go out. If I was Martin Luther King friend, I would have been like, just lay low for a little bit. Like, you did what you did. We can come back and do this more strategically. So I don't believe in that, but I do believe in doing whatever we can to change at least some part of this. And for me, you know, I don't like no. I'm not a big whiner. I'm not a big complainer. Doing the work is the thing that makes me feel better. When I'm having a rough day, if I'm talking about the police, if I'm talking about white people, the systems, the economics, whatever it is, just doing that awareness of it does not make me feel better. It makes me feel better when I say, okay, what can I do about that? It might just be mentoring. Tony Martin just came in. It might just be bringing some young people into the room. That might be your activism for that day, right? It might be find out what's going on with this mayor campaign. I went to a youth town hall the other day where they had the mayors. Just engaging with the organizations that are doing something. If they don't exist, create it. There's something that we can do, and I believe that is the therapy, right? Sitting and talking about it is part of it, but part of what makes me feel better is doing work that I know is making incremental change towards systems that I don't believe in, and I don't think are as powerful as we give them the credit for. Like, It's just people behind these systems. We're talking about the government, we're talking about white supremacy, we're talking about this vague, large concept. They ain't nothing but people. They ain't smarter than me. They ain't more powerful than me. They don't deserve it more than me. They just regular old people. Who's that? The dude had George Floyd knee on his neck. That's a dude. He had a neck too. He ain't got nothing I ain't got. And so I think about it, I have personal power, and then when we collaborate, when we connect, when we organize, we strategize, we have collective power, and that is how we have made everything that we've achieved as black people happen. And I believe we gotta keep doing that work. So and when I do that work, I feel better because of it. And when I sit around and complain, I feel worse because of it. So that's my barometer. If I feel like I'm just talking too much, or if I'm in the wrong places, or if I'm doing the kind of work where maybe I might just be getting money, but it ain't making no impact, then I feel depressed because of that. And I gotta make those adjustments. So what is the need in this community? How is it not just feeling better and coping, but how is it actually changing systems, building new systems, building new economies, building new gardens, building whatever it is we got to do. And when we do that together as men, and we talking about men, we men, we powerful. We got responsibility, we protecting, we providing. That means we got to do some work. And it ain't going to be easy, it ain't going to happen overnight, but it's got to happen. And it can't happen if we just sit around waiting for somebody else to do it. So that's my response to it. And again, that drives me, but it also feels good. I also enjoy it. I also get pleasure from it. And the reverse of it, like I feel sad, I feel low when I'm not doing it. So for me, it's the work. And it's balance, you got to rest, you got to have fun, all that too, but I enjoyed it. Like I love this. Like I really enjoyed it. There's no other place that I would rather be on Saturday. I only sit around watching TV right now. I want to be out doing this work, connecting with the people and doing something to change these things, one person, one group, one room, one organization at a time. And I believe when we do that, we can actually win. And when we do that, we will be less depressed, less anxious, less all the kind of stuff that the mental health field focuses on, because this is just individual basis. But when we collectivize, there's so much power we have.
Thank you, panel. At this time, we're going to open the floor up for questions. Now, here's what usually happens, audience. We open the floor up for questions, and folks want to give statements. So we want to make sure that we can stay on task and respect everyone's time in the panel. So if you have a question, I'm going to give you as much time to get your question answered. We're not rushing. We're on schedule, anchored in wellness and be well organized. This thing really on a professional level. So I'm not giving you no time limit or nothing, but a question usually only takes 30 seconds to a minute. Okay, so we want to give the panelists an opportunity to respond. So at this time, if there are any questions about the information that has been covered thus far, just raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Just so much questions. Like I'm mindful that like this is like a lot of questions. I'm really grateful for the space that you guys are co-creating. So my name is Brandon. I'm from Toronto, and I started an organization called the Black Daddies Club. So we're in our 16th year, and I'm a therapist in training. So there's something that Brother Obari said that really struck a chord, which is this is a part of my education. I spoke to Antonio because like I'm the only black. That's been my story in academia. I'm the only black male in my classes. So my question to, I guess, the panel and even some of the therapists that are here, what are some of the work that you've done and that you continue to do to sort of prepare yourself to work with black men that's not in the school systems that, or the courses or the PhDs, but to make sure that it's relevant to the people that we're serving and that look like us?
Great question, sir. Great question. Anybody can take it.
So when I was at Hampton, I was at Hampton, HBCU, black school, Virginia, a number of black people around, still learning white people's psychology. So I bumped into a guy named Reginald Jones, Dr. Reginald Jones. He was writing volumes of books around black psychology theorists, and it was just 4 of us in that group. I just happened to get lucky enough to bump into somebody that exposed me to a whole field of people talking about this from our perspective. And the organization that I'm a part of, it's called Association of Black Psychologists. It's 50 plus years old. We got our own journal. We got theorists. We got all kind of work that we have created within this organization that's for us, by us, connecting to the African continent, African-centered, to restore that wisdom that is inherent in us, and to give us the authority back to ourselves to say we know how to heal ourselves. We don't need America to help us do that. So some of the readers, some of the folks I would recommend folks reading, if y'all interested in that, is the Naeem Akbar, Wade Nobles, Amos Wilson, Francis Cress Wilson, Linda James Myers. There's a bunch of folk that have been writing for years and years on this particular issue that are the people that I study from, and that's just within the psychology field or social work field. But I also think we need to reach back into all the other different fields. There's wisdom and literacy in art, right, and all the different things that help us understand how to be human, how to heal the wounds of the things that we've experienced, how to organize to build better power. So Malcolm X's and Marcus Garvey's, all of that's healing work to me. We got to find them, read them, study them, and incorporate that into what wellness means for us, and have our own paradigms, our own theories to give back to ourselves and to our people to heal from. Play the game, read this stuff, do their papers, but when we go back into our neighborhoods, we got to have a different center from which we do that work, and ain't nothing but material out there. We just got to find it and create those study groups to make sure we fortify ourselves with that information.
I guess this is along the line of what you're talking about, because what both you guys spoke about was things that really brought up some trauma to me. Was I can't meet with you, you're booked, but there's a white female psychiatrist that would meet with me tomorrow, or a white therapist would meet me tomorrow, that doesn't understand what I've been through, my past, cannot help me cope. Plenty of them. Is there, and also, I guess it's two questions. Do you guys run into a lot of walls when you're trying to keep up in your training and you're trying to make that training be on the black hand side because you've been taught white psychiatry and white therapist stuff? You've been taught that through school. As you're trying to relate it to us, have they said, no, we're going to discount that what you're learning is towards you keeping your credits, your certifications? Are you running into that? And also, where is a network that I can find? If I can't get you, and I can't get you, where else can I go to find another black male therapist or a black female therapist for my daughter? Because I know she's dealing with some stuff. And it was with a white therapist, and I'm like, you don't know a damn thing what my daughter's dealing with, and I had to take her out. So that's kind of two questions. So one is, are you guys falling into things where you can't, where you want to bring in stuff into your practice, and it's being denied by the bigger white organization that tries to hold your credits in? And also, where can we find other black therapists?
I can take that. In our field, we have to pass exams that were written by mostly white people, right? The APPP, the LCSW exam, the LCPC exam, all these exams, right? So I'm helping people prepare for these exams, other therapists. And the first thing I tell them is, think like the person who wrote the exam. How do they want you to answer the question? Because until I get that piece of paper where the state tells me I can practice independently, I gotta follow the rules. I gotta do the thing that they tell me to do. So I was rushing to get that piece of paper so they could leave me alone. Yes, exactly. Right? It's an oppressive system. It takes 3,000 hours before they give us that paper. Plus, it's like a lot of school and a lot of money. But once they give it to us, now I have you in the room and it's us. And we can take those masks off and we can talk real. Have a real conversation. We can kick back. And in a certain rules where I implement in my therapy, right? Just be you. Use all the profanity you want, talk about whatever you want to talk about. I don't care. It's just us. And we talk about coping strategies, what works for you, whatever works for you, not the recommended ones that we're told to give to you. Another piece I want to talk about is we have these theorists that we learn from in our field, like Vygotsky and Freud and Bowlby and all these people, and they're all mostly white faces. So the test makes us prove that we know the theories that were written and created by the white faces. And we have to know them, or they won't give us the piece of paper. So it's a dual consciousness, and some of you all know about W.B. Du Bois and dual consciousness and all those things. You have to, one, know the academic side of it, but also know the other more relatable side, honestly the easier side for me. And then another thing is I want to make therapy easy. Like it doesn't, it can seem like you climbing a mountain, right? And the way we train, it can feel like we're helping people climb a mountain, like the treatment plan piece and the assessment piece. And you have to do all these, complete all these measures and score them, and it can get really complicated. In my brand therapy, we make it simple. After I go through all the things that I'm required to go through, like confidentiality and privacy and all that stuff, I sit down and I ask them, so why are you in front of me today? What's the reason you're here? What you want to talk about? And then I just wait. And whatever they want to talk about, that's what we go through.
I skipped that whole process. Just hearing them describe that just sounds traumatic to me. And I decided while I was in graduate school that I did not want to get that license. I didn't take that test. And I said, I'm trying to figure this out on my own. Let me see if I can carve a lane without giving the state the authority to allow me to do the work that I was destined to do, that my creator gave me the authority to do. So the state didn't have the power to give me that. Everybody know what license be scared to lose their license. And when I saw it, I won't even play that game. And so I've made another lane for myself. And it takes a different sort of strategic mind, different kind of collaborations, build a different kind of network. And I'm making it, like I'm doing it fine. If we had more people that left that system and created another system, I think that we could do the same kind of work in more effective ways if we organize ourselves from that sort of vantage point. So there's advantage, disadvantage to whatever route you go, but I don't have a license. But my degree was in clinical and community, so I do a lot of work that has more of a community psychology lens to it. But I connect with folks that got funding sources. We write grants, we get contracts, we're doing other kind of stuff, so that I don't have to use the insurance to do the kind of work that I want to do, so I can create programs and do community level access. So I've been trying to figure it out another way, and I think that if more people were trying to think that through, I think that we could figure it out. I think that we have enough in our resources to create ways to do therapeutic things, wellness practices, without relying on the same systems that have kept us stuck for so many years.
It's interesting. He's here for his daughter, and I'm here for my son, having gone through a divorce. Do you think that because of COVID, there's a lot of therapists and psychologists who are now doing telehealth and what have you?
Yeah, you can find more people online too. So that's one answer to the second part of your question. There are resources online if people want to find groups.
Well, no, my question actually is, do you find telehealth to actually be more impactful or harmful depending upon the age of a child if you're dealing with children? I was just curious about you all's opinion on telehealth.
I don't like telehealth for kids. My personal view of it. I think kids need a more in-person, interactive kind of thing. Maybe teenagers could do it. There is some advantage of, like, when you in your house, you have a level of comfort that allows you still to develop the intimacy that I think works. But I would say under teens, I would suggest if you can. 8, 9, I wouldn't, my personal view, I wouldn't suggest telehealth for 8, 9-year-old.
Yeah, and I also think that therapy has to happen at a place, like a kid that age, I think that they need to be in person to do play therapy. Because children that young, they don't know what they feel. We putting our kids in therapy, go in there and, tell them how you feel. As adults, we have contrast and we have experience, right? Like, hey, this is the way I was raised, but you've met other people and you know of other situations, people were raised different. So now you can you have contrast. You have something that you can sort of compare. When you a kid, your life is your life. You know what I mean? All you know is what it is that you experience. And when we're asking people to sit there and say how they feel, they don't know how they feel because their feelings are still developing. As an adult, we can recognize what our emotions are and how we feel and woo-woo. But when you're a kid, this feeling is a bud. You trying to identify what it is. And I'm sitting there asking you, what do you feel? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So with youth, the approach is different. You're developing and you're helping them explore what it is that they're feeling. But sometimes like that happens at their own pace because that stage of development of, independence, like there's stages of development where those emotions and that spectrum is still being developed. And I think it can be beneficial for therapy to make sure that we're putting bumpers in place. But I think that in closing that, therapy for children is different from adults because children are developing their emotions versus adults are trying to explore and make sense of the way that they're experiencing things.
Telehealth is not fun. I don't even like it for adults. I don't like it for teenagers, and it definitely doesn't really work for younger people under the age of 12. However, it's an option. If it's the only way you feel like you can go to therapy, if you're like under 15, my job is to eventually get you in person into an office space, like going from virtual into an office. And it usually happens pretty quickly. And again, like young people, kids, they don't have the vocabulary to express how they feel. So you have to play it out. And that can get kind of complicated, so I won't explain that now, but it works. You can use like sand trays. You can go play basketball at the court, right? I used to work at a hospital, and there was a basketball court on top of the roof, on the rooftop. And we'll take patients on the roof, we'll play basketball, we'll like kind of talk through the things. Especially like teenage boys, the easiest thing they say is, I was angry, I was mad. Okay. Let's play that through, right? Let's see what that really looks like. What did you do when you were angry or mad? Not how did you feel, but what did you do? And how did you think people saw you when you were angry and when you were mad? So, yeah.
Just because I really like telehealth, and it's for this reason. I don't think that it's best for children underneath the age of 12. But I think for youth, even if they're not developing, I think just that interaction, because I look at the power control when you go into someone's office. When you're going into someone's office and you're trying to be vulnerable and you're in my space, you're in my office worried about what I'm writing, what I'm thinking, my facial expressions, I think that for some, not all, but I think that for some, I think that telehealth provides an additional protective factor because you get to be in whatever place you feel safe and being vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to look at me. We could just be on the phone, and it could feel more natural for you to sit there and be talking to one of the guys, but instead you really talk to somebody professional. That you could be in your space, in your room, wherever it is you feel safe at, and being vulnerable. For that reason, I think that it's beneficial because now it takes away the intimidation of how I'm receiving you and whether or not I'm judging you. My facial expression, I don't control them. Like, oh, you think this? Nah, it's different when you sort of just on the phone and you sort of just thinking it through. So for those attributes, like I said, it's not for everyone. High severity needs to be in person. Children under 12 needs to be in person. You know what I mean? Yes, but if that's not the case, then I think that virtual is a great alternative. And I just think that's the way of the world now, because then it takes away from you having to drive to get there. I don't want to get into logistical stuff. It's the safety net for me. It's the people that can feel safe being wherever it is that they're at and have someone that they can talk to without leaving that space.
Yeah. Okay, mic check. Peace and blessings, man. That's a very powerful room, man, to see everybody in here. My only statement. I just wanted to say that, or ask, I know Dr. Obari talks about this a lot. I've been in rooms with him speaking about this, but how does like the media, the things that the youth are taking in, whether that be Netflix, TV, or music, how does that play into how they interact with mental health, or how they look at mental health or emotional, dealing with their emotions and stuff? How does that play in, the media play into how they deal with emotions, in your opinion?
I think when we open it up, the first thing is your mind. When you watching the media, it's what it's telling you. You know, when you scrolling all day, you reading certain messages, it's only feeding you what you already think. So it's only affirming what your beliefs are. And especially like nowadays, I was reading something, they were talking about how we're not raising our kids in the church no more. And so like that is being replaced with that social media, and it's the messages over and over again. So without me getting lost in my crowd, I told you my brain and outran my thoughts. I do think that it affects us. But I think we should always be self-assessing, like what it is that's going into our mind. Like I had to stop listening to music. So I was a correction officer for 2 years, right? When I listened to Jeezy, there was problems, you know what I'm saying? If I went to work listening to Jeezy, it was because I was too amped up. I had to start listening to like R. Kelly. I'm on my way to work. I'm finna go get it in. They had me on the crush team. I'm on the SWAT team, everything. I'm going to work listening to 3-piece, okay? Like, because I need my bass line to be so low. But what I realized is that how the music was amping me up. Now it's to the point I don't even listen to the radio no more. I only listen to music I plan on playing, because it's like if I was studying, if I start listening to sex music, then all of a sudden I want to scroll through my phone to see who up. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think those messages do, thoughts influence feelings, feelings influence behavior. So it's like, I feel like you have to be on, remember Riley off the Boondock, yo, you have to guard what goes into your mental and really control what that is. And so I think that it has an effect, and I think that the resolve to that is putting parameters in place to have more control over what your kids and what you're allowing to go into.
The president of TikTok, you all look this video up. He said that he doesn't allow his kids to use TikTok. Up until the age of like 15, right? They can't use it. It's influential, right? It's affirming. The things that we think, you can find something online or in the media where it affirms what you think. I stopped listening to rap before 9 o'clock. I stopped listening to rap a long time ago. Like, I can't wake up in the morning, drive, and listen to somebody say they're gonna shoot somebody or kill somebody. It just doesn't make sense to me. I need something mellow. I need to calm it down. Sometimes I found myself, and I used to laugh at my stepfather about this. Every time we drive in his car, he didn't have the radio on. And then somehow his radio broke, and he never got it fixed. So we're driving in the car with no radio and silence. And I was like, why are you doing that? Now I found myself as an adult doing the same thing. All right, I got this huge screen in the middle of my car with all the songs in the world, but I'm in silence, just driving, just in the moment. I just had a son a couple months ago, and I was talking to my wife about it. And I said, "Are we gonna let him, give him a phone at a certain age, let him use social media and all those things?" And we both on the same page. Absolutely not, right? I want to wait as long as possible before he get influenced by very powerful systems. Like, there's an algorithm. Have you ever seen yourself on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever, and you see an ad pop up? And that ad is for something that you just talked about a couple of days ago. Right? You want to buy some new shoes, or you want to go to the gun range or whatever, right? And it's an ad for that thing. It's an algorithm, right? It's and this is a huge business that a lot of people don't know about. So be careful when you have young kids and social media. Yes, it's influential. And I hear some of the same themes in therapy that I know people got from the media. And the last thing I'll say is I did an experiment in college where they told us to watch CNN for 5 days straight, right? If you watch TV, you only can watch CNN. And then after, they wanted you to basically try to identify how you felt after you watched CNN for like the week of the 5 days. And I was depressed after those 5 days. Like, if you notice, like the news, they tell you the bad stuff first. This person got shot, this person got killed, there's a war over here. Like, that's what adults mostly consume. And then teenagers and younger people, they consume things that are a distraction. And it's usually not positive. So yes, what you said earlier, where the church is no longer like raising our kids, and there's just positive and negative with that as well, but the church is no longer raising our families anymore, but best believe social media is.
I'm not anti-technology. I do think what my brother's saying is real. We got to be very careful, very intentional about how we use it, how we are used by it. Man, I couldn't tell you how warm my heart was when I looked over and saw my son playing chess right now. He was playing chess this whole time. We were sitting there talking. He's playing chess, right? Part of that is because of what we've done in the house, the school we put him in. He's in a school where he has a chess club where their friends is doing it. Like, we've groomed his mind to be attracted to a thing that helps him, right? And so it's all about using it. I think we can use social media for our benefit, to organize, to connect. We can have conversations all around the African diaspora to solve problems together. Or I think that the corporations could use it to our detriment because they have direct access to the minds of our young people. They're putting headphones right into their ear. And I think it's worse than just you find what you affirm. I think that they can manipulate. I think they have been able to use the media to change our minds. You could be good in one moment, and then you see something, you watch Tyree Nichols get murdered over and over again, and now you're depressed, and now you're angry, and you ain't got nothing to do with it. I think that is deliberate. I think there are things that the media has become, the aspects of the media have become intentionally harmful for our communities, particularly for our children, and we got to resist that. I think we got to fight back. I think it's like in a warfare kind of way, in a programming kind of a way, that we have to not just pay attention to, and it's not just like I like it or don't like it, but we have to see it as an arm of a intentional body of a system that is intending to do harm to our children. And it's not just fun. It's not just, I mean, the kids listen to something else, I don't like it. I think it's worse than that. I think that we have to pay close attention to the ways in which our mental health is damaged because of the direct access corporations have to the minds of our young people, and we can't keep letting them have that. I think we got to not just wrestle it out of their hands, but also go to the source of those corporations, the record companies. I think that they are doing deliberate propaganda against us, and I think that we're suffering because of it.
How you guys doing? My name is John Calloway, and Mr. Antonio, I happen to work with your father, and I'm traumatized every day. So I'm probably going to have to come see you at the end of the week and get on the couch, especially after you hear I talk to you today. But I got a different type of question that's been bothering me for quite some time. I've grown up and gone through some of everything imaginable and unimaginable. You know, I've been taken advantage of as a child, nearly, caught up in a teen rape. Yes, it does happen to guys, and growing up with my stepfather and my mother in an abusive marriage that they were in, and always trying to help my mother to fight him off, but always being the one that's getting beat up the most. I've been locked up abroad. I spent years in Thailand in prison, in Bangkok maximum security prison, and I endured all of that, and I made it. And I sat down to question all the time that comes to me, as a child I was taken advantage of. And, I sat down and asked my aunt all the time, I said, the question I keep asking myself is that I done been through all of these things, yet I have never ever thought to harm a child. I have never ever thought to go out and kill 21 people and everything. And I just recently got my gun card and stuff, but I never thought of these things. I never thought of being abusive in a marriage. I never ever thought about messing with another man's wife. And yet I ask all the time the question that keeps gnawing at me, how come I'm not crazy?
That was a big reason why I wanted to go in therapy. I felt like certain things that I went through didn't impact me the same way it impacted other people. I said in the beginning, trauma is the event, the experience, and then the effect. It's not just a simple what you've been through. It's how it impacts you. Eric Thomas talks about how he was homeless, how that piloted him to, his great success. Who else was homeless? Tyler Perry, all these, yeah. But you know what? It's a lot of people over there in Tent City that ain't gonna never leave Tent City. You know what I'm saying? That are impacted by the system, and that being impacted and feeling invisible and living that world, it did something different to them. Like you said, some of the stuff you did, it's like, other people are doing it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because the cold part about there is the world is the world. It's your narrative. If you went into a movie theater, right? A movie theater and 5 different people was directing a movie about your life. It was you, your mother, your father, an ex-girlfriend, and your child. If you went into the theater, each one of those movies would be completely different, because the perspective of how they view you in the situation completely changed. Your mother sees you differently than your father, so on and so forth. This whole world, what we're doing in therapy is understanding what's the narrative of what we're telling ourselves on how we experience it. And it's either we're creating our own suffering by being upset with the world and what our experience is, and or we're creating our own heaven. But what CBT is and what I think therapy is thoughts influence feelings, feelings influence behavior. But thoughts is the narrative. It's the belief system of what you tell yourself that validates what your experience is. And sometimes we're reconstructed where I feel like some people are just built, but I give that to God. There's certain things that I feel like don't affect me, but I just hand that off to God. That's my form of disassociating and like, yo, it don't bother me in that way. But I also think that it's the narrative of what we tell ourselves, because we can be in a situation that's not as bad and want to kill ourselves because of the narrative. And it's all about the impact or the effects, not just what the experience in the event is.
Your story hasn't been completed yet, right? You're still writing it, right? You mentioned all these things that you went through, and then you mentioned it in a group full of other black men, right? So just by sheer numbers, at least one of those things you mentioned, someone else in this room went through that similar thing. They had a very similar experience. And then you had the courage to speak about that amongst us. That shows your resiliency. That shows that you're still writing your book. And I'm hoping that some of these people here read it and take note of what you're doing. And then similar to what you said, some of the experiences that we have, we don't necessarily all respond to the experience the same way. Like, that thing happened, and why wasn't I using drugs? Why wasn't I doing X, Y, and Z? Like, why not? Like, I'll tell you a story. My father and I were rehabbing the property. We're 95% done. We just need to move the tools out of the property so we can get it ready for the market. I'm out eating dinner with my wife, brunch with my wife, and my father called me. He say, he ain't moving, he dead. Okay, I'm over there. So I go there, and our contractor is in one of the rooms. He's dead. Weirdly, he had this residue around his nose, and his medical papers were in the living room of him being recently discharged from the hospital for an overdose. So what do? Okay, call the coroner. The police are already there. They call the coroner. We waiting patiently. The family come. They go in there and cry. They come out. Some other stuff happened. I go home, I eat dinner, and that's it, right? It didn't do the thing to me that it probably would have done to someone else. And not because I'm a therapist, it's because it's been that way my entire life, right? The bad thing that happened, but why didn't I respond that way? So the bad things happen, and why didn't you respond that way? Why didn't you have thoughts to harm a child or harm a wife or harm someone else's? Like, why didn't you have those feelings and thoughts? That's what you explore in therapy, and we'll figure it out.
I'm also very impressed with the courage it took for you to come share that story. The simple answer for me to your question, why am I not crazy? My answer is because you're a superhero. Because you a genius, my nigga. Because if you figured it out. You cracked the code, right? You are the expert. You know what I'm saying? I need to be reading your book. I need to learn. I want to figure that out too. I would love to sit down and figure that out. How did you make it through all of that? One of those things somebody else would have crumbled under. But there's something in you that is powerful enough, something above you, something that carries an ancestor, angel, whatever, something else has carried you through to a place that your superpower has allowed you to be here to share that story with us. There's gold in there. Like there's brilliance in there that we need. Like we need that medicine that you have inherently had in your body is the expertise that we need to be studying, not the Freud and the Watts. We need to be, you are the one, right? And there's a bunch of, I know there's other superheroes in this room. Part of the reason that we still here is because we powerful. Part of the reason we ain't crumble under the weight of the trauma and the slavery and all that stuff was happening is because we the most powerful people on the planet. We're the first humans on this globe, that we got something in us that carries us through, that we could, and if we weren't just suffering from trauma, ain't no telling what we could be. We could be building Wakanda on top of Wakanda. We should be using that superpower to not just make it here, but to be inventing and to create and solving problems. But we so inundated with the traumas that we got so many superheroes in this room that we just barely making it. The fact that you're making it is a testament to your brilliance, but it's also a testament to a world that we're in that usurps that brilliance and distracts it from the things that we really need for us to be doing. And that's what we got to figure that out. How to tap into everybody, how to cultivate the genius that we all got, and you on display right now because but there's a bunch of us, right, that been through some shit that should have crushed us. And that thing that kept us through, we got to bottle that up, and our kids need that. Our kids need what you figured it out even more than the books I read. You know what I'm saying? They're going to come to me to figure it out, but it's you the one, right? All of us, those of us that have been through some stuff, figured it out, survived it, fell down and got back up again, that's the expertise that we need to be leaning on. And so I'm grateful for you sharing that for us. I'm inspired by your story.
Good morning. I just had a simple and short question. Since each one of you guys are therapists and all, what was the hardest case and question that you had to answer dealing with a client or a student or anybody like around my age? Like, what was the hardest thing they endured, and what was the toughest question that you had to answer to help them out?
It's not easy. I just know it was the hardest one for me. So I did the context makes it make sense. I did substance abuse counseling for a decade before I went and got my license. I did, when I was doing the substance abuse, the mentoring, the domestic violence stuff, that was the only field that gave me a chance. After being in the field for about 10 years, then I went and got my master's in social work. So I had already been doing all this counseling. And I had worked in the jail. I'm like, I did my 3,000 hours. I'm like, man, I'm good out here. You know what I'm saying? My first client, I was working with gunshot victims. My first client was 11-year-old who had a stray bullet came through the window and he's paralyzed from the waist down. And it's like, go in there and help him. I have no idea what to say to him. You know what I'm saying? And you know what's crazy? It's like when you work with gunshot victims, it's almost like the ones who more street, it almost felt like they're more accepted of it, because then it's like, oh, it's just karma. What happened to me is something I deserve. If you put this work in the street, it's just bound to happen. There was this innate, I deserve this, or this is what my life is, versus to take someone who was in the right place, he was getting some tea out the cupboard, to take someone who was where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do, and be paralyzed from waist down for the rest of his life. And he's 11. And to try and help him cope with that. I think what my answer is that I'm not God, and I don't know the answer. And I had to do what Obari said, hey man, let's figure it out. I didn't know what to say with him. You know what I'm saying? I'm asking him how he feels. He don't know how he feel. You know what I'm saying? I went and got some clay. We gonna do some art therapy. I'm like, let's make some stuff and tell me what you see. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, let's just explore this together. And he had made a clay of ghosts. He had made a ghost. And I was like, what does that mean? He was like, I feel like that's what people see when they see me. He's like, I'm like the Casper ghost. They see me and they don't know they don't know what I am or what happened to me. He started using other ways for language. So then I started taking him to movies. Hey, what color to safety. But to shorten it up, I explored a bunch of different things that I realized, hey, I'm not God and I don't know what to say. And so I helped him into exploring different things we can do with other people. And what actually ended up working, which is what I feel I haven't talked about enough, is group. I think a lot of times when we don't have the language to describe what it is that we're feeling, group is a wonderful solution to that. So what I did was took him to a group therapy, and there was another dude who was in the wheelchair that was talking about his experience and gave him the words that he needed to be able to describe his experience. That wasn't something he's gonna get from somebody that didn't experience it. Ain't no book on that. You know what I'm saying? There's certain, we need all of it, you know, that lived experience. Yo, you need that lived experience to understand what it's like to lose your abilities. That's not something that's in the book. You need to feel that. That's not something you need to know or learn. You need to be able to feel that. And so I had to, once again, as a therapist, we facilitate the space for change, not a superhero. It's not me saving. Like, we're exploring and we're empowering, we're helping guide. Hey, we in a dark tunnel. I'm just holding a torch. I'm just holding a torch. We playing Marco Polo in the dark, trying to figure it out together.
Yeah.
I was working in one of the prisons, one of the juvenile prisons, with this kid. He was 17 and therefore, you know, doing things. And, you know, I'm meeting with him, he's telling me this story. Like his plans for, he's telling me what he was doing when, before he got into prison. So he say, yeah, we used to always go rob the currency exchange on 55th and Halsted, right down the street, right? And if any of y'all from the area, you know that there used to be a currency exchange on one side of 55th, and then they moved to the other side. So I know, at the time, I knew a few people who worked there at the currency exchange, and it kept getting robbed, like over and over again. And he's telling me him and his boys are the people who were robbing it. So I say, so when you leave here, what's your plan? You still gonna rob people? Like, you still gonna, you know, rob the currency exchange? He said, yeah, that's his plan. Okay, what do I do as a therapist when he already made his mind up? Like, he has every intention on continuing the behavior that led him to the prison. But he loved it, right? Prison wasn't that bad for him. Like, he had fun. And honestly, in the juvenile prison where I was at, they played basketball, they walked on the track, they had friends, and we moved in, it was boys and girls, right? So they had girlfriends. It was great. But he was, as we talk more throughout the weeks, he was doing what he was doing because that was the way he resolved conflict. That was the way, and not just conflict when someone is like in front of you and it's you or me. Conflict when it comes to the financial conflict I was talking about earlier. Like, I don't have no money, my mama home, I don't want to ask her for money because she's working hard. I need to go get it. Oh, I have this other group of people who very similar to me. Oh, I guess we're gonna go get it together. So currency exchange, they got money, easy, right? A plus B equals C. It's easy. So I worked with him for a while. He got released. And then he came back like 8 days later. Okay, I guess this is what it is. Then he turned 18 and he went to the adult prison. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that you're not the superhero. You don't have the powers. We're not saving people. We're helping them explore their thoughts and feelings and the meaning behind their actions. There were other success stories, whereas I had another kid in the same prison where he was also doing a similar thing on a block over. And these kids, they mess with each other. This kid, he got out of prison. He never went back. His mom randomly calls me and she's like, hey, Durrell, I just want to let you know he's okay, he good. Okay, good, thanks. So those are we have success stories, but we also have the stories where it doesn't work out pretty well. And we don't control that, the people do.
Real quick, I ain't got nothing but terrible stories in my head. That's all we do. Even right now, when the worst thing happens to them in their life, they call me. And they tell me, ask what I can do to help. So I got, rape and torture. I mean, all these stories in my head. The hardest question, and I'm going to go right to your answer, young man. The hardest question that people ask in that moment, in that room, is why did this happen to me? It's the hardest question to answer. Because the truth is, I don't really have a good answer for that. We talk about it, we figure it out, we try to unpack it. But the truth is, why did it happen to me? Why did I deserve this? Is the hardest question to answer. And for whatever it is that y'all might have been through in this room, and that question of did I deserve that? The answer is always no. The answer is never is your fault. We particularly talk about kids, like it's never your fault that happened to you. And at a certain point, you grow up and you become an adult and you have the responsibility to manage it and deal with it and to heal it. But that why it happened to me question is it's the most impossible question to answer. And at a certain point, if we keep blaming ourselves for the things that are happening to us, and then we carry that burden and that shame, then it's hard to move past that to deal with the healing. But the larger question for me in those individual moments is when I hear all these patterns of stories, and I keep saying black people having these traumatic experiences, the larger question is why is this happening to us as a people? And more important, what can we do to keep it from continuing to happen? And when we talk about, the responsibility of men, not even just the therapists or the healers, that is the thing that drives me more than anything, just to stop it from happening from the first place so that the kids and the kids don't keep experiencing this trauma, to keep having to ask that question, why me, why me, why me? I think we need to show them a different thing, like why do I deserve this room of men coming to support me? Why do I deserve these good things that are happening to me? Why do I deserve the clean parks? Why do I deserve healthy food? Like I would love to hear that question more often. Man, this is for me, right? This y'all really thought of me? And I don't hear our kids saying that enough. It's a tangent, but for me, that's the question you ask. Why me? That's the question that's the hardest thing to ask.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, audience. Okay, at this time, I'm going to bring Maya up from Be Well, and she's going to give us an explanation of what we're about to do. We've got some food for you guys. We want you to eat. We want you to fellowship. Those of you that have questions, we will address those questions after we return back at 1:15 after lunch. I want to thank you guys for being patient and attentive thus far, and definitely thanks to the panel. This is only midway point. Maya, we're going to keep it going, sharing information and sharing help.
Thank you. Okay, so just a rundown of the rest of the day. We're going to eat lunch, like he said. We're going to fellowship. We're going to talk. We're going to whatever you think you need to do to be unapologetically you in this hour. Okay, and so after that, we're going to do our breakout sessions. It's going to be 2 rounds. We're going to do one. Be Well Chicago is going to do a session on how to deal with a mental health crisis as a non-clinical professional. So pretty much what they talked about earlier, just how you can support someone in a crisis, or when they're